across the country, including our own Maura Healey, are stepping up to fight back. But will they fight or fold? Is it time for the party out of power to adopt Trump's anything-to-win strategy?
And I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. Then it's the culture show's Jared Bowen. AI at the movies, as it's being used to re-edit some endings and even put The Wizard of Oz on the round screen. From Christine Baranski in Newport and more. It's all ahead on the 11 o'clock hour of BPR on GBH and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump has signed an executive order. He says he'll slap an extra 25% tariff on India. That's because India says it will continue to buy cheap Russian oil. That's on top of the earlier 25% tariff Trump put on India. Trump says India is helping Russia pay for the war in Ukraine. Trump's special envoy met with Russian President Vladimir Putin today in Moscow. Jordan says convoys of food aid to Gaza are being attacked by Israeli settlers. They're intent on blocking the aid. NPR's Jane Araf has more.
The Jordanian government says Israeli settlers have repeatedly attacked its convoys and set up roadblocks to prevent food from reaching Gaza. It said in the latest incident Sunday, settlers punctured tires of several aid trucks en route to Gaza after they crossed the border from Jordan to the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Israel says it dispersed the protesters after the attack. A group of UN-backed experts say famine is now unfolding in Gaza. Israel, in July, in response to U.S. and other pressure, began allowing Jordan and other countries to send limited amounts of food to Gaza. Jane Araf, NPR News, Amman.
Texas Democrats are still out of their state, blocking Republican efforts to redistrict. The GOP plan aims to send more Texas Republicans to the U.S. Congress. Now, Indiana Republican Governor Mike Braun says Vice President Vance is coming to meet with him. Braun says he expects one topic will be about the possibility of redistricting Indiana congressional districts to benefit Republicans.
It's exploratory, so there's been no commitments made other than I think they're going to come into every state that's got the possibility of that happening.
He spoke to WRTV. Indiana has 9 members of the U.S. House. All but 2 are Republican. Both Indiana senators are Republicans. A new study in the Journal of the American Medical Association shows Idaho lost a third of its OBGYNs since banning almost all abortions 3 years ago. Julie Lucchetta has more.
Lead researcher Dr. Edward McEachern says the number of obstetricians in Idaho was stable for a decade before the repeal of Roe v. Wade.
Something happened in the marketplace that left some OBGYNs and obstetricians wondering if they could practice safely in the community.
Under Idaho law, physicians can provide abortions only when the life of the mother is in danger or in cases of rape or incest. Outside of those exceptions, doctors can lose their license, face felony charges, and up to 5 years in prison. The study shows most OBGYNs left to practice out of state, while others continued gynecology but stopped providing obstetric services altogether. For NPR News, I'm Julie Lucchetta.
You're listening to NPR.
Good morning from the GBH studios in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. You've been hearing about the Texas state Democrat lawmakers protesting redistricting by leaving their legislature. At this hour, some of them are holding a press conference here in Boston. Texas State Senator Boris Miles says it's not just Texas that's on the line.
After Texas, it will be your state. After your state, it'll be this entire country. When and where do we stop him? We stop him now. Now.
President Trump has implied the FBI could be called in to help bring the lawmakers back. Interesting story here. Former longtime WBZ TV news anchor Kate Merrill is suing the station, CBS, its parent company Paramount, and 4 former co-workers over claims of racial and gender discrimination, according to the Boston Globe. In a complaint filed this week, Merrill, who is a white woman, says the station and the 2 companies took career-ending action against her to advance a DEI agenda. DEI is, of course, short for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Merrill is seeking a jury trial and $4 million in damages. In sports, the Red Sox are back for Game 3 of their 3-game series against the Kansas City Royals. First pitch is at 7:10, and we're looking at cloudy and cool weather today with highs in the mid-70s. Then tonight, more clouds and lows near 62. Right now, it's cloudy and 72 in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. I am Jim Browdy, NBC 10 Boston. Sue O'Connell is sitting in for Margery. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. In the noon hour, Doris Kearns Goodwin will join us here on the 60th anniversary today of the Voting Rights Act before it disappears. Right after her, State Auditor Diana Dizoglio will be here to tell us if question 1, where the voters voted 71% in favor to have her audit the legislature, is ever going to happen. Hello, Sue O'Connell. How are you?
Hello, Jim Browdy. I'm doing great. How are you today?
Good. My day started, before we get to the topic at hand, I'm over at the Newsfeed Cafe getting something to eat, and there's a woman in front of me who orders something, and the person serving her says, do you want it here or to go? She says, well, maybe to go, and she points over to this direction. She says, the noise is going to start any minute.
Here it is.
So let the noise begin.
Bring down the noise, Jim.
Okay, so you just heard this on the news here, both national and local. From California to Illinois and here in Massachusetts, Democratic governors are attempting to show they can play Trump-style politics in this fight over Texas redistricting. And as you know, they're attempting to create 5 more Republican seats in the House of Representatives so that they can keep a majority in the midterms. Is it a sign that you've been waiting for? Dems finally choosing to not hold themselves to Michelle Obama's legendary standard enunciated at the 2016 Democratic National Convention.
When someone is cruel or acts like a bully, you don't stoop to their level. No, our motto is, when they go low, we go high.
Is it time for the Democratic motto to be, when they go low, we go low too? The number is 877-301-8970. What do you make of the fact that Democrats apparently are going to attempt to gerrymander their blue states in retaliation to what the Republicans are trying to do in Texas? You in favor of that? Do you want them to fight rather than fold? Or is your position they have to stay principled even if it means they're going to lose? The number is 877-301-8970. You're a fairly principled person.
I am indeed.
So what's your position on this?
Punch him in the nose. What's the problem? I mean, no, listen, the last time we talked before the air, Jim, have Democrats ever really been able to replicate what Republicans do? Yeah. And they tried really hard, just recently,
This
right?
is a good one.
President Trump, in his first term, many people believe the 25th Amendment should have been invoked. Many people believed he had issues. He might have dementia. He might have Alzheimer's. All these issues, right? Republicans didn't say boo. They just kept voting for him. And then we get Joe Biden in the White House, and people start saying he's got Alzheimer's, he's delayed, he's got illnesses. And what did the Democrats do? They threw him under the bus. Right? If they had acted like the Republicans had acted around Donald Trump, we would have President Joe Biden right now. But they can't. So therefore, my concern about the Republicans and the Democrats taking a play out of the Republicans' book is they're not really good at it.
Well, I would suggest we probably wouldn't have Joe Biden, but I take your point, as they say. The only example I can think of where the Democrats decided, this wasn't even going low. I love this. Margery and I talked about this a lot. A bunch of years ago, the Democrats in the House decided on gun measures. There was some gun legislation. They do a sit-in at the House. And I have to say, I think I speak for Margery, we're both stunned. It was such a radical behavior, civil disobedience. If you get arrested, you get arrested.
Right.
John Lewis was still there, who sort of helped pioneer that kind of nonviolent protest.
Good trouble.
Do you remember what the Democrats did after they did the sit-in? July 4th came, and they went home.
Yeah.
They don't know how to fight. They've never really known how to fight. And there's a serious issue here. I mean, this is not just about, tit for tat kind of thing. The control of the House is probably in the hands of people like the leaders in Texas and the Republican Party who are willing to do anything to make sure there are, 5 more likely Republican seats. And it seems to me, if they're going to do that, if you want to play the game of politics, as distasteful as it may be and as horribly precedent-setting as it may be, you got to do it. By the way, I'm dying to hear what Doris Kearns Goodwin thinks about this. We'll find out in the 12 o'clock hour. We want to know what you think about it, though. 877-301-8970. We should say, in all fairness, the Democrats haven't done anything yet. But, for example, I think it's in California, there's an independent commission that establishes the districts. Most people know that the redistricting generally happens every 10 years when the census comes out, but there's no constitutional thing that says it's got to be then.
No, and states might have different constitutional issues per state, but, as we know, we should also note, we invented the gerrymander here in Massachusetts.
Right here in Massachusetts, yeah.
Yes, Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts in the 19th century, 1812, invented the gerrymander. So
I thought it was Governor Mander, not Governor Jerry, but it wasn't. No, I'm joking.
Governor.
In any case, but by the way, the California thing, what they've got to do is there's going to be a question on the ballot theoretically in November, this November, saying they'll get rid of the independent commission so that for the following November, if Governor Newsom, who's term limited and will be done in 2028, decides to do it, the California can essentially make it an all Democratic. I think it's like 43-9 or something Democratic.
It would be a total,
or some such thing. But the goal would be 52 there. So what do you think about? What's analogous to this? I just realized it was the beginning, the notion that you had to have 60 votes for judicial confirmations, and then it got lower for lower court judges. Democrats and Republicans both doing this. And then ultimately we end up with horrible Supreme Court justices who are anti-majoritarian, not to mention deceitful in their testimony, because you only need 50 votes plus 1. So it does lead you down a path, but is it a path you want to see Democrats going? 877-301-8970.
All right, let's go to Tim, who's calling us from Lynn. Hello, Tim. Welcome to Boston Public Radio. What's on your mind?
Hey.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
This whole idea of going low, how about you come up with some ideas that actually people want to support rather than just reducing yourself to the competition? Like, Democrats have to come up with ideas that we want to get behind, not just dump on the other party. It doesn't
Why can't you do both? Why can't you try to counter their effort to gerrymander themselves back into a majority while you're coming up with policy prescriptions that appeal more to the American people?
You can, but the Democratic Party hasn't done that. They were in charge when Biden was there. They had all the opportunities to do whatever they wanted, and they just said Trump was a bad guy for 4 years.
Hey, so, Tim, with all due respect, you must have been asleep for 4 years. That Congress, just to name one thing, passed the largest climate-protecting legislation in the history of the planet. It's being eviscerated
in a bipartisan way.
So for whatever it's worth, I think your sense of history is not totally accurate. But thank you for the call. 877-301-8970 is the number.
The other issue is, do the Democrats just, and we've learned a lot over the Trump years, that a lot of the things we thought were enshrined as law just happened to be decorum and just happened to be what people thought they should do and didn't have to do them. So the question becomes, while the Republicans are saying, okay, we're going to rip up the rule book and we're going to do our rule book, are the Democrats just supposed to stand by and say, well, we'll wait till we get back in power, we'll wait till we're elected, we'll do these things, or do they rip up the playbook and make their own playbook too? I mean, because I think the Democrats have been standing by expecting things to return to normal, and that hasn't happened. So at what point do they go ahead and say, no, we're not coming back to Texas, we're going to change everything?
I want to, after I criticized Tim's retelling of history, let me give him one point which would have been a better example. There's a guy who won the Democratic primary to be mayor of New York City. And while some, because he calls himself a democratic socialist, as does, by the way, in a poll yesterday, the most popular politician in America, Bernie Sanders. The most popular politician, I think it was a Gallup poll, affordable child care, limit on rent increases, et cetera, et cetera. The vast majority of New York politicians who are big deals, the Schumers and the Hakeem Jeffries, have not endorsed them. Who goes down to New York to endorse them and appear with them publicly yesterday? Elizabeth Warren. And so I think that's, in fairness to Tim, That's the kind of thing maybe that he is talking about. 877-301-8970. Anonymous texter says, I love this guy, Tim for governor. So, Tim, you do have some
you got
supporters.
one vote, Tim, and yourself. That's
in this
two.
audience.
There
Where do
you
you want to go, Sue?
All right, let's talk to Deborah in Acton. Hey, Deborah, welcome.
Hi, Deborah.
Thank you. So just so you know, I'm the punctuation freak that called in last week.
Can I tell you, were you the one that says, I'm coming in hot? Was that you?
Yeah.
That was one of the best calls of the month.
Was it about
fabulous.
the Oxford comma?
It was essentially
about I'm a fan of the
more.
Oxford
and
comma,
more,
so I believe in the Oxford comma.
Deborah, it's great to have you back. What's up?
Thank you. In any case, same today, but here's my thing. I feel like Democrats have got to, and I'm a Democrat, we've got to grow a spine. We've got to meet fire with fire, or we are done. We are toast. And so I would like Democrats to say, yes, if they're going to play this way, we are going to fight back in this way. And then I'd like to see that accompanied by a statement and an intention that when we are able to restore some level of sanity, that we will do our best to restore sane districting that is done by independent commissions as much as we are able across the country, because that is the principle to which we should adhere. But I feel like in this moment, all bets are off. And as an add-on, I want to say that Democrats would do well to listen carefully and support Johnny, because what he's speaking is what some people in this country really need to hear. And I think Catherine Clark, it's shameful that she has not said that she supports him.
Well, in all fairness, in fairness to Clark, I don't know if this is true. When I asked her the other day if she'd endorse him, this is the number 2 Democrat in the House, obviously a Massachusetts congressperson, and she said she had not. And I said, would you if he asked you? She says, I don't endorse in mayoral races. Now, if that's true, that's a different story. But she did say that she had not endorsed him. Deborah, thank you for another fine call. As I said to Tim, as Deborah says, do 2 things at once. Go low if you have to now, and hopefully, if it allows you to be back in power, act in the same kind of fashion, playing by the rules they did in the past.
You know who would be fighting back very hard?
Who's that?
Tom Menino. Tom Menino was somebody who was both a bully and someone who also believed in the system. I mean, we would laugh a number of times. There were things that Tom Menino would do that if he had been a different type of politician, like more conservative, like when Chick-fil-A wanted to be on the Freedom Trail some 20 years ago, he basically was denying many of their rights by saying, we don't want you here. But he stood up for something, and then they opened and everything was fine. But it is really definitely this, are you willing to fight back and break the rules a little bit?
877-301-8970. Anonymous says, absolutely, I'm so tired of a decade or more of when they go low, we let them win, which is essentially, I mean, that is the alternative here, even if you find it distasteful. And by the way, I do too. If you let them do in Texas what they're about to do, we just heard on the national news, Vice President Vance is on his way to Indiana to try to get the Indiana governor to cook the books like Abbott is doing in Texas. You can either give up or you can fight like they fight.
Cynthia from Marblehead is picking on my Revere High School public education.
What'd you
Apparently, Eldridge Gary is pronounced Gary, not Jerry.
Oh.
He's an important pounding foot. Then why is it gerrymander?
As opposed
Shouldn't
to
it be
gerrymander?
gerrymander?
That's a very good point.
I mean, what am I supposed to do here?
Cynthia, why isn't it gerrymander? Can you text us back,
if you
please?
get like Gary Studs, Jerry Studs, it's all very confusing.
It's a
all right.
very fine point.
Adam from New Hampshire says, okay, let's say they don't go back to Texas. The law is pretty clear that they will have their seats forfeited and could be prosecuted if that happens. Will you take the stance that they are above the law?
Well, I don't think that is the law.
That's not the law. So they probably have not abandoned their seats technically. It's unclear how much legal authority the FBI or the governor has in arresting them or making them come back.
Chris and Bill Ricca says, go low? I think we have to go even lower. So there you go. Danny in Andover, you're next on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
So I'm a little confused because as a Republican, I feel like you guys, or Democrats, I should say, have already done a pretty amazing job of disenfranchising all Republicans in blue states like Massachusetts, for instance.
Wait, don't go. We're not going to hang up, but how's that happen exactly?
I don't know much about the current gerrymandering, but I know the gerrymandering, this is interesting. was actually invented by a politician in Massachusetts.
A governor.
I think named Gary something.
Boy, everybody knows this but me, apparently.
We're not laughing at you, Danny. We're laughing at Sue. Go ahead, Danny.
It was shaped like a salamander wrapping around the
Well, Danny, you're right, by the way. When Barney Frank, was it during Barney Frank?
Yes.
When Barney Frank, or maybe it was even Joe Kennedy, whatever, was a congressperson, the district went from Newton to Fall River. That actually, it's fair. That's a fair criticism.
Yeah, and gerrymandering is always, I mean, I think that the pullback point is that it's always fraught.
Yeah.
It's always political. There might be a better way to do it.
We get rid of gerrymandering.
But the issue is here on this sense is that they are doing it on purpose to purposely favor at the instruction of the President of the United States. That's a little different than an elected official.
You guys think Democrats have never done that?
No, we just acknowledge you. You're right.
But a President of the United States has never directed a governor to change. Can you cite a time when a President of the United States?
Go ahead, Danny.
I think we're in a time where the Democrats have gone low, and now Republicans are going low. So now we're all in the dirt. It's not pretty, but it's where we're at.
Danny, thanks for the call.
Thanks
really
for the call.
Appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Do you mind looking up, Jamie, when that district was gerrymandered?
District 7, is it?
I don't know. We only do it every 10 years, so it was a couple of 10 years ago. Was it during Barney Frank? Was it during Joe Kennedy? The elder, the younger, the whatever? When did that happen? That was, when did that happen? 877-301-8970. Our question is, now that, as you said, we should have put it this way, that Trump directed the leaders, Governor Abbott and others in Texas, to do some mid-decade gerrymandering to try to create 5 more Republican seats to try to help the Republican majority in the House of Representatives keep its majority. Should Democrats be doing the same thing? And Danny from Andover did have a point. Democrats have done the same thing too, but they've done it in normal times. And Danny said, I don't know what the solution is. Solution is what Sue mentioned before, these independent commissions like California currently has, which are not partisan, and they theoretically make decisions about districts based on the merits. And by the way, can I say one more thing? Chuck Todd is the first person who said this on the show when he was still hosting Meet the Press. We asked him one day, where did this polarization start? Why is it so polarized and so horrible? And his response was one word: gerrymandering. Because so many of the districts of the 435 House seats, somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 400, are almost impossible to beat an incumbent or the other party. As a result, people take more extreme positions. And if they were fairer races, where both parties in maybe a majority of the 435 House seats had a chance to win, they'd have to go more to the center, and there'd be a less partisan America.
Of course, the counter to that is that if you have a bunch of people of a certain type living in a neighborhood, but they are split in half because of the way the district is, they never have a majority in their own way to vote for someone who represents them. So but this is why you should have an independent commission do this, or have AI do it. How about that? All right, Kathy.
Go ahead.
Kathy from Jamaica Plain.
Hi, Kathy.
Hey, long first.
Yay.
Past time to go low.
Okay.
We're losing our country. We're pre-coup. We have to do whatever needs to be done to get our country back. That's it.
So are you looking to, Kathy, I mean, I think one of the lessons we're learning from what the Democrats are doing right now is that it's the state party leaders, the governors, the state lawmakers, who seem to be filling the void of the many national leaders. Many people are saying, where are the Democrats? And it looks like, would you agree that the Democrats taking action are in the states?
Yeah, where are the Democrats? What's the plan? I've been waiting. What's the national plan? I haven't heard from anybody. If they're not going to come up with a plan, then the rest of the Democrats have to come up with a plan. Somebody's got to move forward to get our nation back. I don't care how it's done. If it's done illegally, we've got to be a little bit careful about not being taken to court, because Trump has control of the courts. But anything else that needs to be done, it's emergency time. People need to rise to the occasion and figure out how to get our country back.
Kathy concisely said, thank you. Chris in Tewksbury. Jim, you just dismissed the caller about not doing enough under Biden. However, they failed to repeal, meaning the Democrats under Biden, failed to repeal the Trump tax plan, which they claimed and is a real issue. That's true. Failed to put place in measures to prevent gerrymandering. Climate change legislation helps save the earth, but not the republic. Also, don't dismiss people like Tim, as they're the ones that are frustrated with Democrats. You make some decent points, but the Democrats did try, for example, to pass the John Lewis, I don't know what it's formally called, Act. It was just refiled a couple of days ago. There were a number of democracy-protecting things they attempted to do, but I think, as you probably know, virtually everything these days, except these special kind of reconciliation bills, like the big, beautiful bill, needs 60 votes in the Senate, which make it almost impossible to do. But they did try, but it is fair to say they didn't achieve those goals. John in the car, hi. You have 40 seconds. Go.
40 seconds.
Go.
Okay. You there?
Yeah.
We need Democrats need a Roger Stone, okay? The Democrats need someone to fight and win. The Democrats also don't need to say, well, we've got to nominate someone who's half Swede, half Thai, who has one leg for inclusiveness. They need a fighter. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. You've got to fight. This is dirty. Politics is amok. I'm from the old school of James Michael Curley and, hate to say it, Billy Galvin. Go out and fight. Do the underhanded stuff.
Billy Galvin is now the...
Because guess what?
What's that? What's that?
These guys aren't going to stop on the other side until they're crushed.
Got it. Judy in Danvers, how is telling Texas to redistrict Texas any different from calling a Secretary of State and telling him to find 11,000 votes in Georgia? It's not.
It's not any different at all.
It's essentially a very similar behavior by the President of the United States.
As you can tell, we're talking about redistricting, gerrymandering, as I'm now going to call it, and more of your calls and texts. We're going to take a quick break, so stay with us. I'm NBC 10 Boston's Sue O'Connell in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy, and you are listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the BPL and streaming at .com GBH News.
August 6, 80 years since the first ever use of a nuclear weapon in war.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy.
We look at how that history is still remembered in Japan and how it continues to impact Japanese nuclear policy today. Next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And MIT Federal Credit Union. With a full range of financial services, their financial advisors are committed to helping members' money work for them. Membership's open to the public. More at mitfcu.org. Federally insured by NCUA. And North Shore Music Theater, presenting Grease, a new production featuring Danny, Sandy, and friends with songs from the Broadway musical and film. On stage at Bill Haney's North Shore Music Theater, August 12th through 24th. nsmt.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Margery's off. NBC 10 Boston Sue O'Connell is here. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. In about 30 minutes, Doris Kearns Goodwin will join us on the 60th and hopefully not the final anniversary of the passage of the Voting Rights Act.
We laugh.
Followed by, well, it's not, I mean, it
cry,
could happen.
We laugh.
State Auditor Diana Dizoglio in question 1 status will follow her at 12:30. Just tuning in, we're talking about what you want to see from Democratic lawmakers in the era of Trump. Now that governors from California, Illinois, and Massachusetts have stepped into this battle over Texas redistricting, either sheltering the Texas lawmakers, as Healy is doing, I think 10 of them, or pledging to redistrict their own blue states, like California, in retaliation. A slippery political slope, or just the kind of fight with fire with fire attitude the Democrats need in 2025. The number is 877-301-8970. That caller said Democrats need a Roger Stone, and Jamie jokingly said, can you imagine Jim as Roger Stone with a full back tattoo of FDR? For young listeners who don't know, Roger Stone has between his shoulder blades a tattoo of Richard Nixon. I interviewed him at the Minnesota Republican National Convention a bunch of years ago. That was the one where Sarah Palin became the vice presidential nominee. I'm embarrassed to say, but it's true. I said right after, one of the best political speeches I ever heard, Sarah Palin,
Yep.
lipstick
Yep.
on a pig. And I asked him to take his shirt off jokingly and
he
show
did.
it. And he took his shirt off and turned around and showed viewers the tattoo.
Jim, when you ask someone who has been very open about going to sex clubs to take their shirt off, you should not be surprised. when
Roger
they do.
Stone goes to
Yes.
sex clubs to take
Yes.
He
Yes,
does?
absolutely.
How
Go
did I
ahead,
miss
Google
that?
It. I don't know how
Go
you
ahead,
guys
Google
have missed
it.
it, but be careful. Don't Google it
Go
on a
ahead,
work computer.
Google
But
it.
go ahead and Google it. Roger Stone. I thought he was going to be the fun part of the Republican Party, but oh well.
Tom in Watertown, you are next on BPR with Sue O'Connell and me, Jim Browdy. Hey.
Hi. So I'm all for fighting back. I don't see that it's necessary to go low, but I do see it's necessary to be smart. And I don't see very much smart in the Democratic Party. And furthermore, I wish that we could make this fighting back not a partisan issue, but one which draws together sensible people. And I think that we've really lost out on this. For example, I wish that, as someone said before, that the great strength that the Democrats have is now in the states. So let's get our state legislature to call out the Supreme Court and say, these people are doing a very, very bad job for all of the country. I mean, why not get a body like the legislature to respond to some of this stuff? So anyway, that's my point of view.
Tom, thanks for your point of
appreciate
view.
it.
I don't know about legislatures, but I do know Democratic governors have been pretty outspoken,
Yep.
not just about Trump, but about our rogue Supreme Court.
And filing lawsuits. I mean, that's how the Democrats usually, and Republicans too, fight. I mean, look, Trump came in and passed a bunch of executive orders, over 100 at last count. I don't even know how many of which are not enforceable and are working their way through the court system. So why aren't our Democrats? What are they doing? Which is kind of the same. Why don't they do things that have no hope of passing to make a point?
I think the model for presidents in the future, Republicans and Democrats, is going to be twofold. One, we've said it 1,000 times. The Project 2025 thing was totally brilliant. One of the reasons
I wish
that
someone
Trump
had told the voters about that.
One of the reasons that Trump
we
has been
did.
able to, quote, accomplish so much is the game plan in great detail was spelled out before the voters cast their ballots in late October and November. And the other thing is he has a brilliant, and I don't mean this sarcastically, ability to, quote, be in the news. I was going to say make news, but it's not always news. Every 15 minutes. We were looking at each other. It was, 10 o'clock this morning with the news. He'd already done a bunch of things.
And we didn't even get to talk about him being on the roof yesterday.
Right, roof.
I mean, that just moved on.
The roof of the White House.
The roof of
saying
the White House.
There should be nuclear weapons on the roof of the White House.
Right, and then we're moving on to India.
It's the ultimate flood the zone line from Steve Bannon, and he has done it brilliantly, and the press is, including us, we have not quite figured how to catch up yet. Conrad, you're in JP, you're on BPR. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course.
So instead of discussing going high or going low or going through the courts, which, as you know, takes too long, I think that all the Democrats, including indivisible, should call for a general strike. Nobody go to work, nobody buy anything, nobody leave their homes. Stay off the streets. This would make all the major corporations shriek with fear.
Can I tell you something, Conrad? I believe that people should take to the streets when their rights are being totally eviscerated. But I had this argument in a polite way with the head of the Civil Liberties Union yesterday on the air, who is a big believer in action like you talk about. And I mentioned the headlines in the Globe the last few weeks about demonstrations. Every headline has the word dozens in it. Dozens of people rally, dozens. I mean, we
Jim,
are so far from a general strike, even though I would say that the actions of this administration merit it. Thank you, Conrad.
You've made the point over the years
I
around
have.
college tuition, like in France.
Oh, yeah.
Right? If college tuition goes up, the whole country goes on strike.
Like 10 minutes later.
And we just go in the middle of the street and lie down and let people drive over us. Americans, when in general, and I think part of it, not to go too far here, is that Europeans think the government works for them and they expect the government to do things where we're always fighting with our government instead of saying this is what you need to do for us. I agree with you. I don't think we have it in us to do a nationwide strike for any of us, however you define us.
Can I anticipate an argument that Margery makes all the time? this is not to criticize her, but it's a factually accurate argument. Like Medicaid, for example, when he signed the big, beautiful bill eviscerating Medicaid and food stamps, she makes the point, which is true, that the Republicans brilliantly scheduled the gutting of Medicaid and food stamps to be after the next November election. So people are going to look around and say all those horrible things Democrats predicted didn't. However, my response to that is what I said to Carol Rose yesterday, is people immediately before and after the passage of that budget cutting, tax cutting bill, the so-called big beautiful bill, said by 2-1 they opposed it. So the American people understood, maybe not in great detail, they understood how horrible this so-called big beautiful bill was, and they did absolutely nothing. There should have been spontaneous demonstrations a la Conrad on the streets of America that Friday night. There was nothing except tweets, because we are the most passive people, at least right now, in generations. You know, it's a problem to talk about generations. Doris Kearns Goodwin walks in and you're afraid she's going to say he has no idea what he's talking about. Don't say anything, Doris.
Just stand behind him.
She's here. She'll be on at noon. Don't go away. Robin Seekonk, welcome. Oh, no, we can't. We're out of time.
Out of time.
Sorry, everybody. We'll get back to this.
Rob says, play a little league rule. If the other side plays dirty, we have to decide we're going to play that.
I like him.
Way. Okay, all right. Thanks for all the calls and texts. Coming up after this quick break, it's the Culture Show's Jared Bowen with the latest in arts and culture across the Commonwealth and beyond. I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy, and you are listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Dennis Lehane. He's known for his literary crime novels, including Mystic River, Gone Baby Gone, and Shutter Island, which all made their way to the big screen. He's also made a career writing for television. In Apple TV's new series Smoke, Lehane takes a true crime story of an arson investigator and infuses it with his imagination, sparking a slow burn thriller. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Furniture Consignment Gallery in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. Open during the Mass Sales Tax Holiday Weekend, August 9th and 10th. Purchase reservations are available in-store or by phone through August 8th. FurnitureConsignment.com. And the Boston's the 2025 season of Tanglewood, showcasing the beauty of incredible surroundings and world-class music. Tanglewood, where music goes for the summer. Tanglewood.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston. She's sitting in for Margery. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News on the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. As I said, let's hope there's the 61st. Doris Kearns Goodwin will join us in about 25 minutes. Right after her, State Auditor Diana Dizoglio. Speaking about democracy, we'll talk about whether Question 1 will ever be implemented, following 71% for support by the voters. Joined now at the BPL by Jared Bowen. Jared's GBH News Executive Arts Editor, host of The Culture Show, which airs daily here on 89.7 at 2. And for our friends in Western Massachusetts, they can get their dose of Jared and Company Saturdays at 7 p.m. on 88.5 NEPM. Hello, Jared Bowen.
Hello,
Jared.
Jared.
Good to be with you both.
Good to see you.
All right, Jared, let's talk about intelligence of the artificial kind. Many folks may have seen on the socials the Wizard of Oz recreation that was made for the, what's it called? The Sphere in Las Vegas, where people have been raving about seeing concerts there, and some big movie to start messing with a little bit and adding stuff to. To be charitable, there were mixed reviews. I think overall people didn't love it. And there's now a movie where the ending has been changed by AI. What's happening here? We've been talking about this for years, and you've been very forward about what the future may look like. It's here now, Jared, so what's happening?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different iterations. So I guess we'll go to India first to talk about what they've done there, which there is a 13-year-old film that was basically about a young man who is a Hindu boy who is in love with a Muslim girl. Long story short, doesn't go well. It's not unlike Romeo and Juliet, and one of them dies at the end. Well, 13 years later, the film company, which has all legal rights to this film, has decided that they wanted to re-engineer it and give it a happy ending. And they can do this through AI. So again, 12, 13 years later, they have manipulated the performances, they've manipulated the film, and suddenly you have a new film that they've put back out into distribution. So their argument is, we went to the creative team, they were okay with it. Some of the creative team has said they absolutely did not come to us, we are absolutely not okay with this. And so now you have two examples of the film. But this presents us with an issue that we haven't talked about yet, which is everything that we have taken for granted until this moment in the arts, this whole history of film. We now know, of course, AI is advancing at such a rate that they can go back and manipulate it. They can go back and they cannot kill Bambi's mother so that that changes.
Spoiler alert.
And suddenly she doesn't go out into the forest to make friends, so that changes. Or they can go back to Old Yeller and
spoiler. All right, Phoebe from
end.
Friends, don't spoil it.
But this is fascinating because the artists who are involved here don't really have a legal mechanism to this, because at what point would they know to have in their contract, you can never go back and change the ending of this film through a technology that I don't even know will exist in the future?
Well, don't creative teams, though, generally, even if they didn't know about AI, don't they generally have language in their contracts, or at least should, that gives them final approval of any creative changes to their work?
Not necessarily, and I think that sometimes the language is very vague, and so that you can have some sort of input, but you can't necessarily anticipate this. So clearly the studio here in India has found a way, because this is a big Bollywood film, they have found a way around this. And you know that this is not going to be the end of this, that certainly companies are going to start to look at things, especially look at stuff that's in the public domain, as we're entering this era where more and more films will start
Winnie the Pooh.
Like Winnie the Pooh. Well, the character, was turned into an axe murderer, but now you can take existing films that have come into the public domain and you can manipulate them.
So let me ask a question. I think I asked you this question like 3 years ago, Jared, so I'm going to ask it again. So what's the difference between using a tool like AI to reimagine existing art versus sampling a song and putting it in your new record, or making an art collage where you're taking existing art and media and putting it together? What's the difference?
I think it all becomes intent. So if you're talking about remixing a song, there are still shades of that song there. Maybe it has a bit of a different layer of artistic influence, but here we're talking about something where something has fundamentally changed. You go through any example in history to talk about love story. Spoiler alert. Okay, she lives at the end and she goes on a bachorette party. I mean, this changes the whole tenor of the film, and that's exactly what they're arguing here. I mean, this was about a doomed relationship and two clashing religions, and there was a reason that this could not work out, and yet they decide that they are going to give it a happy ending.
Did you on your show, a television show, interview the two stars of the love story when they were in town a couple years ago?
Ally McGraw and Ryan O'Neill, I did.
Was that thrilling?
Yeah.
I did too.
I did too. Do you know what Ryan O'Neill?
How great was that?
Do you know what Ryan O'Neill did?
What?
He invited me back to his hotel room.
Excuse me?
I was happy about it.
How'd that go?
I didn't go, but he invited to bring Ally with him as well, so it was okay. But I have witnesses to this, so it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
By the way, I've never told you he invited me back to his hotel room too.
Roger Stone was there.
You know, so
I invited them both back to my hotel room.
Okay, fine. So as long as they don't, I don't like it, obviously, as you know my view on this. But, however, as long as the original work of art, whatever it is, a painting, a movie, or whatever, a song, is preserved, and people can choose to access that version, the original, as long as no contracts are being broken, no laws are being broken, why are you shaking your head? What's the problem?
Because it's hard, and I'm wrestling with this as we're talking about it. So this is a good time to bring in the Wizard of Oz that we were just talking about, because I feel differently about the Wizard of Oz. So as Sue mentioned, the Sphere is this amazing new I haven't seen it yet, but I've talked to many people, many friends have been, and it's an incredible venue. I was there. I was just talking to somebody who saw U2 there, and I said, well, how close
Didn't they open it? They opened it.
They opened it. I said, how close could you be? And they said, it doesn't matter, because it's all about the experience, the visuals. It's literally a sphere. All of these screens that can be programmed to give you this immersive experience while the band is actually playing on stage. So now we have the Wizard of Oz, and they have created this experience. So you see the Wizard of Oz, and they have wind blowing for the tornado, and they have drones carrying monkeys and other things that give you...
And they've added imagery, right, to the movie.
So they've applied AI so that you have sort of a smoothed out experience as they're describing it.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I haven't been.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. So, but I think they start to play with the film, and also they cut it down from about 102 minutes to 75 minutes.
So why is that okay?
I definitely have an issue with that, but taking out the running time aside, or leaving the running time aside, I would argue that this is just a different way to experience something that is largely artistically intact. So that's why I have less of a problem with it. It's not like you're changing the end of the movie so that Dorothy wakes up and suddenly
has a bachelorette party.
Has a bachelorette
so
party.
Essentially, to sum
it was
up,
a wild night with the Scarecrow.
Your
and the Tin
position
Man.
on AI alterations is either you're for it or against it. That's where you are. Is that a fair assumption?
I'm either for it again. No, there are different shades, and this is the whole issue. Is that it is
it's not
here
a different shade. They're changing the damn movie. I mean, I'm fine
They're
with
not
it.
completely changing the Wizard of Oz, but they're changing the Bollywood movie.
Okay.
They're enhancing the Wizard of Oz. They're changing the Bollywood movie.
And we have to decide as a society what we're going to be okay with, because just like everything else, there's no guardrails for this right now. And so this is happening in India. Will it happen in Hollywood? Australia and Europe have more guardrails about these kinds of things, but much of the world doesn't.
Well, and those unions and those negotiations, like the recent ones, Screen Actors, whoever the hell they were, have got to stand tall. They got to do that kind of thing. We're talking to Jared Bowen.
All right, Jared, let's go to Hawaii, where we're, obviously we are every day looking at news about our environment and things that are being taken from us, and every 100 years, it's happening every week now. Tell us what's going on in Hawaii after the wildfires.
So it was 2 years ago this week when the fire happened. The fires happened in Maui, and Lahaina was just completely destroyed. And this was a very historic section of Maui, especially for indigenous people. There was a lot of religious temples, 3 major Buddhist temples that were destroyed. However, the great story coming out of this, in so much tragedy, is that there have been a number of people who've been doing this cultural excavation, and they've literally been sifting through the debris, and they're finding about, at this point, 1,600 objects. They're finding urns and bells, and they're finding things that were in museums, especially related to the whaling industry. Typically what happens in a situation like this, and maybe it's happening in Los Angeles right now with Altadena, is they send the bulldozers in to try to clean everything up and begin the rebuilding. But they were a little bit more methodical, and I think it's because this was such a designated historic and religious district that they were very careful with it. And so in the midst of all this tragedy, they were able and have been able to salvage a lot of great history, share these stories, keep them intact. Especially these urns were filled with people's remains. Some of the remains are actually still in the urns as they found them, to the relief of family members who wanted to have some sort of continued moment as they respect and honor their loved ones. I'll point out that this is all part of a project also by the Smithsonian, who gave them technology, who gave them one of the archaeologists who's working on all of this. So you have to wonder where this all stands as we see cuts to the Smithsonian, funding cuts that is, and to the NEA and to the NEH. But it's really an extraordinary effort that's been underway.
Smithsonian did a great job. However, as we all know, they had to pause for the day that they were removing the history of the 2 impeachments of Donald Trump.
Yes.
As soon as that was done, they were able to return to the Hawaiian thing. So she is obsessed with Christine Baranski. You're going to do something with her, so let's jump ahead and do her, because it's going to make Sue O'Connell very happy. First of all, what are you doing with her?
We're going to be having a talk at the Newport Mansions, all about her, because she's starring in the Gilded Age right now, so we'll have an on-stage talk, not unlike I've done with Doris Kearns Goodwin in the past. She's sitting right over there. Well, so we'll talk about her career, we'll talk about her process, we'll talk about filming the Gilded Age, which is Julian Fellowes' television show on HBO, which kind of mirrors Downton Abbey, but it's really about what was happening in America at the time. But because so much of the show is filmed in New York, its proximity to Rhode Island, those great mansions, they've filmed, I think, at least 7 of the mansions so far. So
that's where people summer, Jim.
I know, I hate
Newport,
that verb.
He loves that word.
No, I really hate it. So is she doing something with Nicole Kidman, speaking of...
yes.
What is she doing?
She's also in the show 9...
You didn't have to yell, by the way.
It's very exciting. I love Christine Baranski.
What is she doing?
So there's a second season of the show 9 Perfect Strangers, based on the Leanne Moriarty novel, which played out in season 1, but they've reassembled a story, or created a storyline for season 2, where you have a bunch of people showing up for a retreat built around hallucinogenics. And Christine Baranski plays this over-the-top mother who arrives in the arms of a very handsome young man for whom her daughter has a lot of problems.
I love her. She's amazing, and she's a great singer as well. That's the other part that
know
people
that.
don't know much about.
Really?
Christine. Oh yeah,
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia.
Oh, okay.
We were watching it just the other night. She's just amazing. She's one of my favorite actors.
I am so looking forward to this because she seems like so much fun, and she has a connection to the Newport Mansions within her own family.
What's the connection?
It's all through her husband's family, who is part of the Gilded Age. She didn't even know this until she launched into the project and figured out how his family was represented there.
Well, I'm jealous.
So we have
Calling
a
me
question
jealous.
from an anonymous texter. A question for Jared. That would be you.
That'd be you.
He says, weren't medieval and Renaissance paintings often altered later? Is that true?
They were embellished.
What does that mean in English?
I mean, sometimes they would move an arm, or they would paint in a tree.
Hello. Okay. So why is that different?
Well, if your
That
arm
isn't
is
what
on your hip instead of the table.
But that isn't what the artist wanted. Maybe it mattered to him or her that the arm was on the... Very good question, anonymous texter.
I think it's in the
You're
same
flummoxed, aren't you?
No, I'm not flummoxed. I think it's the same as... do I look flummoxed?
You look flummoxed.
Doris, do I look flummoxed? It's the same as the Wizard of Oz. There are shades of it rather than... It's not like somebody took painted an alien ship coming down to take the king away off his throne in a Renaissance painting, which would very much change the intent.
So what about Star Wars when they added they did the reboot of that and they added more aliens to it or more?
Well, George Lucas definitely had the involvement there,
Okay.
so there you have the creator involved.
We're just gonna quiz
See,
him on all this.
not flummoxed.
I think you are post-flummoxed.
We did this last
I
week
think
with all
you
the
are.
presidential pets.
We did.
With
Yes.
President Polk.
President Polk, who had none? I can't remember.
none.
And what happened to him?
Exactly. That was exactly our point. Thank you very much.
Take that, Marblehead. I do know some history.
What did happen to him?
I don't know.
Henry, he was the youngest president
We'll
to
look at
die who was not
Doris Kearns.
assassinated.
Yeah,
I think
see,
he was.
That's what happened.
There
to
you
him.
go. I can't believe I knew that. In any case, Henry Diltz.
This is really exciting. There's an event coming up where Henry Diltz is going to be having photography on view, and he'll be speaking at Emerson College. Who is Henry Diltz? He is somebody who was there at the very beginning for Joni Mitchell, The Doors, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Jimi Hendrix. He was a musician who picked up a camera one day and just started taking pictures, and then ultimately created this huge canon of work of all of these stars. Music stars earlier in their careers. And so Sweet Baby James, that album cover, that's his. The Doors, Morrison Hotel cover, that's his. And so this story really emerged that he became the official photographer of Woodstock. He had friendships with all of these musicians because he was different. Whereas typically in those days, a lot of the photography came from the press, who would arrive on the scene for magazines and so forth and take pictures. He was among them, so people felt comfortable with him, and you can definitely see that in the personalities that emerge and how he renders their albums and why so many of them chose his photographs to be the covers of their albums because of the relationships. He has seen so many people he worked with died. He's still going. He's still photographing. And so, as I mentioned, he's going to be speaking at Emerson College on August 14th, and his work will be on view that day as well at a public gallery there. So you can hear all of these great stories from him and this amazing air that he breathed with this roster.
You know, speaking of great musicians, I want to play a single I just heard. You know, you're a critic. I mean, a critic?
Yeah.
You're a viewer, let's
Yeah.
say. You don't like the word critic. You're a viewer. I just heard a single last night. I want to get your sense on it. Can we play that a little bit and let's hear what Jared has to say? Go ahead. Okay, so it apparently is called Crimson Deceiver. What do you think about that?
I love it.
And why do you love it?
Well,
Jared?
I do love heavy metal, actually.
Oh.
And the frontman for this band is Max Chow-Gillette, who is a culture show producer.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
So he had this band at Tufts University when he was a student there, and then he came and joined the culture show. The group is still together, as you're hearing, because this is their latest single, Crimson Deceiver. They have a music video that's coming out shortly. But this is an amazing group that's right here in Boston, and they are working really, really hard. It takes a lot of work.
Somerville-based, is that where they are?
Somerville-based.
Yeah.
Originally, they're a little bit more spread out now, but
Okay.
largely Somerville-based. It takes a lot of work to record a single, to do all the mixing, to then create a music video, and he's done it all.
They
with
look
his
like
group.
they look like a rather seedy group. I mean,
Well,
I have
you
to
have
say,
to if you're doing heavy metal.
Oh,
You have,
do?
you have to
Okay.
look seedy. It's great to hear guitars again. I have to say, I feel like we don't have enough electric guitar in pop music right now. And I know this is metal, but it is great to hear guitars.
Congratulations to Max. The band is Fossil. The song is Crimson Deceiver, and it really is great. You know, I bumped into him in the hall the other day, right after you had been on our show, and he had heard me say that I had gone on Saturday by myself to see Naked Gun and how disappointed I was. And he asked me why, and I said some moronic, superficial
Were you
thing.
flummoxed?
And then I was flummoxed. I wasn't flummoxed yet. I was flummoxed only after he told me why he liked it, which was like a written review in spoken word, and I was mortified.
Max
so I
is
just
very
nodded my
intelligent.
head and I turned away and walked down the hall. It's kind of thing.
I didn't know you went by yourself. You can't
I
go
did.
see a comedy by yourself.
No, actually.
Who are you going to laugh with?
I invited a lot of people, and so I ended up going
But there
by
were people
myself.
chewing around him, so that kept his attention
That was true,
going.
by the way.
I can't stop thinking about this.
I know.
But I
have
think
the
I've gotten
disease.
in
What's
your
it
head.
called again?
Misophonia.
Same disease that Jared's got. In any case, good luck to Fossil. We only have a couple minutes left. There's another film you want to talk about before you go, and we'll pronounce it for me first of all.
Casino in Ischia.
Okay, here's a little sound from Cassino in Ischia.
Time for me to get back to work. Reclaim the throne.
Let's go. We're going to revive the glory days of Italian cinema. Action!
Where's the sound mixer?
Just count.
1, 2, 3.
You are overcounting.
I'm not sure that gives you a full view of what exactly the movie is. What is the movie about, and what do you think about
Well, let me
it,
give you the
Jared Bowen?
background first.
Please.
It's kind of a fun story because you have two Massachusetts natives who grew up in Lynn. Brother Joe Scioto, who wrote this. Joe wrote the film. Frank is directing the film. They have always loved film since they were kids, and then went on to intern on a Martin Scorsese film, Casino, actually, ironically, or coincidentally, I guess I should say, and then have gone off on their own. And actually, one of the producers of Casino is the producer on this. So, filmmaking duo from Massachusetts. They also did the movie The North End and a movie with Danny Aiello here, but this is it's a fun movie that takes you to gorgeous Italy, and you find a fading action star in Hollywood who is finding himself being replaced by the younger set, so he goes off to grieve in Ischia, this gorgeous island, and he meets this director who is inspired by the films of Luchino Visconti, who did Death in Venice and others, and he finds his artistic heart again and finds his health again, and it's a fun comedy in beautiful Italy.
I'll go with you,
By
Jim. I'll go
Massachusetts
sit with you
natives.
if you'd like.
I'd really like that.
I'll
if
sit
you would.
near you. We don't
I'd
need to sit
appreciate
next
that.
to each other.
By the way, before you go, an anonymous texter says, for your information, Jim, a pope directed that drapery be added to the naughty bits on Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel frescoes. Is that true?
Probably.
Is that okay?
I'm not going to
Thank you.
weigh in
How
on the
about
Pope.
when our Attorney General had our statues covered in Congress?
That was
because-
Ashcroft?
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Was that
Yeah.
okay?
There was we
The
talked about
breast.
this.
He had the breast covered.
Over
You know
at
what
the-
Margie would say? We were doing I don't know if you were streaming then, but every time Ashcroft would do a press conference and move his head, the breast would appear. He moved to the right, there's a breast, whatever kind of thing.
They're wrestling with that at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum as they do the Dutch room and they look up and there were Italian ceilings that were covered up. The nudity was covered up, but it was still covered up in Isabella's time, so they don't know whether to uncover it or not.
Good points.
story.
All right,
Good
Jared
to see you,
Bowen,
Jared Bowen.
GBH News Executive Arts Editor and host of The Culture Show that comes up soon. We say goodbye to everyone at any PM, but make sure to tune in to the Fabulous 413 starting at 3 this afternoon. We're going to continue here in Boston. Coming up after the news, what a group here. We got Doris Kearns Goodwin, State Auditor Diana Dizoglio, and more. I'm Sue O'Connell in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Margery Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org. At Pompeii, Italian archaeologists complete the biggest dig in a generation, where they strike gold and luxury in one of the lost city's richest homes. Watch Pompeii, The New Dig, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR Live from the Boston Public Library on the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. Presidential historian Doris Kearns Goodwin retells the history, where her husband, by the way, was center stage, and to trace the steps that have weakened the legislation over time, right up to Texas's planned gerrymandered maps. On the 60th anniversary, will we make it to 61?
I'm Sue O'Connell in for Margery Egan. Then it's August, and State Auditor Diana Dizoglio still hasn't audited the legislature. Like the voters actually approved back in November, she's going to join us to talk about what, or better, who is standing in her way. It's all next on the second hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The United States and India are in a standoff over tariffs. India's Ministry of External Affairs issued a statement in which it decried as, quote, unjustified and unreasonable President Trump's decision to double the U.S. tariffs on Indian imports by hitting the South Asian ally with a new 25% levy. India says it will take all actions necessary to protect its national interests. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has more.
Trump announced a 25% tariff on Indian goods last week as part of a set of global country-by-country tariffs that will take effect Friday. This additional 25% is set to take effect in 3 weeks. Trump says the new tariff is in response to India purchasing Russian oil amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The White House also said the new tariff is aimed at deterring other countries from buying Russian oil. India has argued that its purchases of Russian oil have kept global prices low and that the U.S. previously encouraged those purchases. The U.S.'s major imports from India include pharmaceuticals, clothes, and stones and metals used in jewelry. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin's welcomed President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow. They were scheduled to hold talks over Trump's economic threats if Putin continues to resist a ceasefire with Ukraine. NPR's Charles Means reports on the prospects for today's outcome.
Putin insists his army is the momentum on the battlefield, therefore he's given no indication he'll back down. But if that's the case, why get together? It seems like both sides might be looking for some kind of compromise or face-saving gesture. Perhaps not the full peace Trump is demanding, but something just enough to keep him from fulfilling his threats come Friday.
NPR's Charles Means reporting. It was 60 years ago today the Voting Rights Act was signed into law. NPR's Hansi Lowong reports the law's remaining protections against racial discrimination in elections are set to face major new challenges at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Months after the Bloody Sunday March in Selma, Alabama, then President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the landmark law for enforcing the 15th Amendment's ban on racial discrimination in voting.
This act flows from a clear and simple wrong.
Now, the Supreme Court may soon hear a case out of Louisiana that questions the constitutionality of factoring race into redistricting, and another case that could limit enforcement of protections for minority voters. Evan Milligan, who's leading a voting rights lawsuit against Alabama, says the Voting Rights Act needs supporters now more than ever.
We have to use our voices to demand that our votes are counted, not as some type of privilege, but as the right of American citizens.
Democrats have introduced bills to strengthen the Voting Rights Act that are unlikely to pass in the Republican-controlled Congress. Hansi Lowong, NPR News.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 136 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH studios in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. Boston is now a stage for the Texas redistricting fight. You've been hearing about the House Democrats protesting a Republican redistricting effort by leaving their legislature. Today, some of them are speaking out. Texas State Rep Carol Alvarado is one of the members preventing the map redraw from moving forward.
The spirit of rebellion that was born here lives in every community that refuses to be silenced. We're here to say that Texas will not go quietly into the night, and neither should you.
President Trump has implied the FBI could be called in to bring the lawmakers back. And an interesting story here from the Boston Globe. Former longtime WBZ TV news anchor Kate Merrill is suing the station, CBS, its parent company Paramount, and 4 former co-workers over claims of racial and gender discrimination. In a complaint filed this week, Merrill says the station and the 2 companies took career-ending action against her to advance a DEI agenda. DEI is, of course, short for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Merrill, who is a white woman, is seeking a jury trial and $4 million in damages. In sports, the Red Sox are back for Game 3 of their 3-game series against the Kansas City Royals. First pitch is at 7:10. Boston Public Radio continues next.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Welcome to Hour 2 of BPR. I'm Jim Browdy, NBC 10 Boston. Sue O'Connell sitting in for Margery. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. 60 years ago today, President Lyndon Johnson made his way to the U.S. Capitol, and with Martin Luther King Jr. standing behind him, signed the Voting Rights Act into law, a signature piece of civil rights legislation which passed both houses with overwhelming majorities. And then President Johnson spoke to the nation, saying in part this.
95 years have passed since the 15th Amendment gave all Negroes the right to vote. And the time for waiting is gone. There were those who said smaller and more gradual measures should be tried, but they had been tried. For years and years, they had been tried and tried and tried, and they had failed and failed and failed. And the time for failure is gone.
Time for failure is gone. 60 years later, a question on many of our minds is, will it make it to 61 as voting rights have been eroding through the years? To talk more about that historic moment and what's happened since, and by the way, an achievement in 60 years ago that was in part made possible by somebody our next guest knew quite well. We're joined at the library desk by Pulitzer Prize-winning presidential historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, the woman behind zillions of best-selling books like Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln, and the beautiful 2024 and unfinished love story, A Personal History of the 60s. Doris, it's great to see you as always.
I'm so glad to be with you.
We're so glad to be with you.
Luckily, I already have her autograph on a number of books, so I didn't have to bring any in, so I didn't have to carry the big books. Great.
They are big and fat.
And I like them that way. That's great. So why don't we just gather around the fireplace here, and if you could just tell us the story, tell us the saga, tell us the song of how the Voting Rights Act came to be. What happened?
Well, it really starts in January of 1965, and Lyndon Johnson had thought they could not have voting rights in 65 because they had to absorb the Civil Rights Bill of 64, and then he'd have it in 66. But Martin Luther King had other plans, so he came to talk to Johnson, and Johnson understood. He said, what if you find a place, it's one of these telephone conversations, those great telephone conversations, find a place where it's really bad in the South. And they found, of course, Selma, where 55% of the people were black in Selma, and only 2% were able to be registered, because they prevented people from registering. You know, they'd say, how many seeds are there in a watermelon? How many jelly beans are in that jar? What's the 14th Amendment, the 10th Amendment? And people couldn't register as a result. And so he staged there, the marches there, and Johnson said to him, just make it so that the ordinary person who drives a tractor is going to say, this isn't fair, this isn't right. And so they were doing the march, as we know, in Selma in March of 65, and they were met by the armed troopers, and it was all captured on television. And those peaceful marchers were hit with bullwhips, with clubs and horses going into them. They went hospitalized, and people saw that, and just as Johnson had predicted, they knew this isn't right, this isn't fair. So he decided, okay, the time has come now, I'm going to do this. He decided on a Sunday night that he would give a speech to a joint session of Congress on Monday, because he knew the conscience of the country had been fired. And that was the speech called We Shall Overcome speech that goes ahead of when we finally get, before this bill is actually passed. And it really helped to make the bill. And that's the one my husband worked on, as well as on the signing statement here.
So there was an interesting story this part of this. Some guy is on vacation, sailing off Martha's Vineyard. I think it's the day that this actually is about to happen. I can't remember. Who was the guy, first of all?
Well, maybe Richard Goodwin,
your former
husband.
Your late husband. Okay, so this story is unbelievable. He is out sailing. This is pre-cell phones, obviously, pre all that stuff. What happens?
So what happened is he had already gone and finished the signing statement, of which you read part of it, right? And he had gone on vacation. Finally, I can get away from Lyndon Johnson. And he's out on a little sailfish in the morning of August 6th, this very morning, and all of a sudden this huge Coast Guard cutter cuts 60 feet, and it pulls right up and decides that the President of the United States needs you immediately in Washington. And so he said,
what an image.
So meanwhile, they've got a plane waiting, the Vice President's plane. It comes on the runway in Martha's Vineyard, which was a much more rough runway. It actually hurt the runway. They had to repair the runway. And then the limousine is waiting when he gets to Washington, and he just has to follow up following that speech. Now, I was in the House that day, too. I mean, I didn't know my husband yet.
You were like 20, right?
Well, 22.
22, okay.
So I was working for my congressman from Long Island, and it was so exciting to know that the bill was going to be signed in the Capitol Dome that day. I, of course, was not going to be part of that ceremony, but all of the people in my office, we got together to watch it on television. And there was that feeling like, this is so historic, and we're part of it. And all summer long, it had been a summer of wonder. All the Great Society legislation, Medicare and Medicaid. Every time one of those passed, everybody would go and have drinks and celebrate. And then finally, NPR and PBS and National Arts and Humanities. It was just I felt like I was part of something that was much larger than myself. So that was exciting. When I think about 60 years ago, I was there. I knew it was happening.
Does it feel like a different country to you that you're living in now?
It does. I mean, when I remember all of this, and then I think the part that reminds me every single day of what that was like at that time is that after he finished the signing statement that we listened to, he then went to the president's room. It's a special room off the Senate to give the pens out. He would give hundreds of pens out. And first one he gave was to Humphrey and Dirksen, because they were the Congress on bipartisan. As you said, it was overwhelmingly supported, this bill. That's the sad thing to realize. The country was happy. Not just black people were happy. We were happy that we were doing something great. And then the next one was to Martin Luther King and Whitney, et cetera. And then he finally said, well, where's Dick Goodwin? And so they bring him in. And then the picture that we've had in our study for years captures a picture of Dick getting the shaking the hand, getting the pen, and then it's put there. There it is. Look at that.
Wow,
so there's Speaker McCormick. So that hung on the study of my husband until he died, and I now have it in book.
What's that do to you seeing that? I know it's in your life.
I see it every day, but today when I woke up this morning and saw it and realized, oh my God, this is 60 years ago, and look what we're dealing with today in terms of what's going on in Texas and the fight against voting rights. Time.
How did Dick reflect? When he talked to you about that moment, you didn't know him then. How did he reflect on that moment?
There's no question he thought the passage of the Voting Rights Bill and whatever small part, the speech that Lyndon Johnson gave to the joint session of Congress that he had helped work on, had helped to make that happen, was probably the proudest moment in his public life. You never forget that.
Doris, my mother loved to hate LBJ. It was a passion of hers. I think it was a hobby. And I had a great opportunity spending a lot of time in the car with my daughter once where I talked about Lyndon Johnson, the type of president it was, the things that he did that you could never do today, and how he was able to strong-arm people to get to do things. He'd tell one person one thing that they wanted to hear, the other person another, to come to this common good. And at one point she looked at me and she said, he sounds like Donald Trump, in a way, in this bombastic, bigger than life sort of figure. And it struck me, this is first term Donald Trump, but at the same time I'm wondering, could anybody else have done what LBJ did? And is there a new LBJ model that we should look at to save America right now?
Well, I think you're right that he was a force of nature. I mean, when he was coming into a room, you couldn't take your eyes off him. I mean, he just was, first of all, he's big. I mean, how tall are you?
6'5".
Yeah, I think you might even be a little bigger than him.
Yeah, but I've never dominated a room, so it's an alien
You're dominating
concept.
us right now.
Whatever.
But there was I think the most important thing he did is he knew when he won that election in 1964 by a huge majority that he had only a short amount of time to make it good. Yeah. And he knew, he said, I'll start losing support immediately. I'll say something stupid and then half the people will go against me. Maybe I'll send boys to foreign lands, sadly, which is what happened. Yeah. So he said, get your asses off the ground, everybody on your staff. Let's get it going. And it was like an assembly line. He knew which bill was coming first, Medicare, Medicaid, and then as soon as that was moving, then he got the next one going, and then he got the next one going. And what happened in 65 was miraculous. It really was the social revolution, justice revolution, that we're still now trying to tear apart, some people are in the country. And we've got to remember what it felt like when that was right.
So let's talk about that erosion a little bit. Was the Shelby decision the first of the damaging episodes out of the Supreme Court of the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened is that part of the Voting Rights Act said that if anybody especially in the southern states, were going to change their voting apparatus and their registration drives and who could vote and whatever, it had to be cleared by the federal government. And that meant...
In advance, pre-clearance.
Pre-clearance. And then what Shelby did was to say, they don't need to do it anymore. We're fine now. This is many years later. And then the minute that was done, then the states in the South, Alabama and Louisiana, started, you have to have an ID. They started to say you can't have, mail-in driving. The registration drives are less. They started chipping away at it. So, and then you've had more decisions since that. After that, it makes it harder to issue a legal fight against discrimination. And then obviously you've got people now in the states saying, okay, we have to have not as many drop boxes. You can't have a registration on the same day. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. In this country, should not be a partisan thing. Everybody should be able to vote as much as possible. That's what democracy depends on. What is democracy? It's simply a system of government where people can vote the leaders in or vote the leaders out. And that means most people should have the chance to vote most of the time. We should have a week of voting. You could have 2 days of voting. You could have voting as a holiday. And the idea that you're cutting out voting, which is the only thing that a democracy can finally depend upon, is something that everybody should care about on either side of the aisle.
So after that Shelby decision, which, by the way, I mentioned who wrote it only because at one point Margery, and I have to say to a degree, believed that Chief Justice Roberts was going to save the democracy from its ruin, but he's participated in its ruin. He not only wrote that decision, he wrote the immunity decision last year, which is catastrophic to say the least. There are two kinds of gerrymandering, without giving people a headache. There's partisan gerrymandering, which you just do it to help, like they're allegedly the only motivation in Texas, even though some people think it spills into racial gerrymandering, which the Supreme Court said a bunch of years ago, the federal courts will have no involvement in. If state courts want to do it, it's fine. And racial gerrymandering, some prohibitions, even though it's been weakened, please correct me if I'm wrong, continues to be an issue, but the Supreme Court just took a case just very recently, and the indication is from the majority that once again, we don't have to worry about these kinds of issues anymore, and we may be at the point where racial gerrymandering is no longer precluded constitutionally.
Yeah, again, in the 1960s, that incredible decade that I'm so glad to have grown up in, it was a real sense that how lucky to be there at that time and be young. Two really important Supreme Court cases occurred then that created one man, one vote. So the standard is that everybody's vote should count as much as everybody else's. So that means that if you've got Texas and 50% of the people are Republican and 50% of the people are Democrats, and then you make it so that only 10% are going to be able to vote for a Democrat. That's not right. That's not one man, one vote. It's also why when the census comes and you get more people in a city, you have to be able to give them more representation because they're people. So that standard has never been fully met, but it was really where the Democrats were moving was to try and have these independent commissions. And now they're going to have to go against that in order to fight fire with fire, as they're saying. But maybe after this is over, whatever happens, we can go back to that. And that's what everybody would be so much better off with, an independent commission who decided where this district should be so that it would be fair. How great it would be if you had Republicans and Democrats in the same district fighting against each other.
You know, can we just stay on that for 1 second? As you know, California does have an independent commission. Gavin Newsom, who said, let's fight fire with fire, the current governor, said he's going to propose a measure for this November's ballot, which would undo the independent commission so that California could do a tit for tat, if not more, with what happened in Texas. We opened the show today asking listeners if we first played Michelle Obama's legendary "When They Go Low, We Go High," and we sort of bastardized it a bit by saying, is it time for the Democrats to go low, or at least go the same? I think the conclusion we reached was, and listeners reached, was an absolute yes. Do you share that?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. What you got to hope is that if this thing then works itself out, then afterwards they come back and they say this was temporary and now we're going to go back to that. Because if this continues each time, every 2 years, then the thing's going to be impossible.
Does that ever happen, though? Does that ever happen where people sort of get down, I don't even want to say in the mud, but let's call it in the mud, and then after some sort of balance is recreated, they decide to redo what they had undone? Does that ever happen?
I suspect it has. I mean, I can't think of it right now, but I think you can be at a different point and you can say, okay, we don't want this anymore. So I think that's possible. I mean, you've got to believe that people have decency still in them in the country.
We're talking to Doris Kearns Goodwin, on the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act.
You know, Doris Kearns Goodwin, one thing that I've been surprised about, that I've learned so much during the Trump administrations, is how so much of what I thought was law was just habit, suggestions, just decorum, well, we won't do that because it might be illegal, but apparently it isn't really unless this happens. And I'm just wondering, sort of to your point, I mean, I'm also a bit of an institutionalist. I'm always trusting that the institution, whatever it is overwhelmingly going to work, that the people are doing their best, that things will work and get done the way they are. But as I said earlier, and I don't know if I said it on the air or to Jim, I feel like a lot of people are just standing holding the rule book going, no, wait, you can't do this, when the time might be to rip it up and to take action. I mean, is that really, and how would someone do that? How would a regular person say, I'm not going to put up with this anymore, I'm going to make a change?
Well, I mean, all the great changes in the country have come from the ground up, from regular persons. I mean, that's the important thing. We have to remember when we feel powerless right now, some people might. When Lincoln was called a liberator after he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, he said, no, don't call me that. It was the anti-slavery movement and the Union soldiers that did it all. And that movement took decades to develop, right? There was a progressive movement in the cities and states before Teddy Roosevelt came in with a square deal for the rich and the poor. And there was, of course, the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, the women's movement, the environmental movement. We have to have a political revolution movement, I think. And my husband wrote a book called Promises to Keep before he died, which called for campaign finance reform, called for actually term limits, and for gerrymandering problem limits. And we're at a stage now where I think the whole structure itself needs changing. And we can do that. Filibuster change, possibly. These things happen if people demand them, and people haven't put enough people in place who will say, please, you got to pledge you're going to do this if you get in there. And the other problem, I think, is the campaign finance is still a huge problem. The amount of time people have to spend to stay in office and to win office means that they're thinking about the moneyed people more than the ordinary people. It's not fun to do that. So I don't think our best people are entering public life in certain ways. And then when they get there, they're there from Tuesdays to Thursdays. They run home to raise the money. They used to live together. Well, they didn't live together. Well, some of them did, I guess.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
They did. Those bachelors would live in those places. Yes, of course. And their kids knew each other. So they're not going to do the kind of things that they're doing against each other now when there's a human being that's right there every day with them that they know.
You know, you mentioned a minute ago, Doris Kearns Goodwin, that, you know, most great things this country has achieved started from the bottom up. The spirit I am is not about Donald Trump and his misogynistic, racist, hateful, sadistic behavior. It's the American people's response is so tepid. I'll harken back. I mentioned this before. We had a conversation with Carol Rose, the head of the Civil Liberties Union yesterday, who is very pro small d Democratic action. And she, of course, mentioned the rally that was huge, but it was a couple of months ago. And I've mentioned, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the headlines in the Globe, dozens rally for so-and-so, dozens rally. What happened? Where did this passivity, this tweet from my underwear on the couch mentality, where did this come from?
Speak for yourself, Jim.
I mean, it's deeper even than the people not showing up and following through on movements. And it took discipline. When that civil rights movement was going, what if they had said at the middle of the bridge, oh, well, this is too hard, we're just going to go backwards. But they had been fighting sit-ins and going into stores and marches for such a long period of time. They had leaders, they had discipline, they worked on it. And I think now it's just a matter of anybody getting out of their phones and out of their passivity as a person to do things. And yes, we had a 1 million-person march when Trump first came in, but what was the follow-up to that march? And we've had town meetings now where people are rallying, and we've seen marches, but then you have to follow up on it. It means you commit yourself and time and energy to doing something collectively. And I think people have become much too individualistic now. This is what's happened. There was a feeling we talked about this, I think, one other time when I was here, when I was at the Civil Rights March in 1963, that feeling of being part of something larger than yourself is contagious. It's a great feeling. I'm doing something to make things better. But it means you're going to put aside a lot of your time to do that, and you have to have people to do it with.
The other thing, too, which I've noticed covering the Karen Reed trial, right, and seeing the people who call themselves Free Karen Reed, who are everything from progressive liberals to card-carrying MAGA Trump supporters, time sort of staying together to find a reason to fight for stuff. If you suggest to one side rather than the other, well, our institutions have problems. Can we work together to fix them? And I wonder, certainly people came together for the voting. How do you bring people together after they have had a common goal, but now they have to find a way to stay together? We learned in the election, saving democracy wasn't a good enough message.
Right. I mean, that's what takes leadership. It takes words.
Leaders.
It takes leadership. It takes leadership. And they have to be able to talk in ways that they can motivate people and inspire people. It doesn't mean large, big language. It means just talking to them and listening to them and putting people together and say, will you come to this? Will you come to this? People would feel, I think, so much happier having more. I mean, just that famous book that was written, Bowling Alone.
Bob Putnam over at Harvard.
I know, exactly.
Brilliant.
It was such a great title,
it was
right?
Brilliant.
I actually go bowling with my grandchildren, so I don't bowl alone. I love bowling. We used to do it back in New York in the old days.
The notion of the book, by the way, we should say, is that people don't belong to social clubs or unions or whatever anymore. So rather than being in joint gatherings which inspire everybody, they're, quote, bowling alone.
And the great Alexis de Tocqueville, that great philosopher, when he came to America, he said the real strength of our democracy was that we just are in all sorts of clubs. We have a club for a garden club. We have all these things. We're always with other people. And that's not true now. So I think it's the isolation of people that feel that they're not part of something larger than themselves. But people can still rally you to do that. I still got to believe that desire to be able to make your country a better place, to make your town, make your city. I've said before and will say again, I still think what we need to do for high school kids, and David McCullough's grandson is working on this in a smaller way called the American Exchange. You bring kids after high school to another part of the country, and they see and hear with what other people feel like, even though it's very different from their own. We live in silos, and he does that for a week at a time after the kid graduates from high school rather. And then they know this is what it's like in Cotulla, Texas. The Cotulla kid comes to Wellesley. Oh, this is what it's like there. They're not so so divided that we can't talk to each other.
They're not siloed.
That's the word. Exactly.
Right.
Can I one up?
That's why I want a national service program.
Well, it's funny you say that. We talk about a lot on the show. I do. Is why shouldn't there be mandatory service for high school kids, a year between high school and college? Go meet people who are not like you. Understand how you benefit from service as much as those who you're serving. Just nobody has the courage to do it.
I mean, people want it, but it's a hard process to figure out how to do it. But look at the success of City Year. Look at the AmeriCorps. Yep. There's more people wanting to do those programs than they have spaces. If I had one thing to do, it would be national service. Just think of what it would mean. They have to come. They can either go in the military or national service. But I know my son who was in the military, he said that nothing will ever He did it after 9/11. He joined the Army. As you know, we've talked about it, but he said nothing will ever go back in his mind to what it was like to have a platoon of kids from all different parts, classes, different sections, and bring them together for a common mission. And those missions that the kids could do in that year after high school could be, they could help with flood control, they could help with natural disasters, they could read to people, they could do all sorts of things. That will change them when they go back.
Okay, so almost every time you're here, Doris Kearns Goodwin, here's how the interview ends. I turn to you and say, you've been really optimistic today. Do you really feel that, or do you feel you have to present that? Today, you don't seem quite as optimistic as you've been in the past.
I feel the sad irony of what's happened today, 60 years ago, and what we're watching in Texas right now. But there's a fight going on in Texas right now. And I think if people could just remember, that's why these anniversaries are so important. Remember how it felt when it was good. If you lose that, that's why when we cut back on history, it's disastrous, because it's heartbreaking, because then we don't even know what happened in these troubling times. And there's a feeling like people need to say, we don't want to teach people and make them feel guilty about Jim Crow or slavery. Let's not teach it. Unless you teach how we struggled to get where we are, you'll never get the good feeling. So this is good today, because 60 years ago today, an incredible thing happened that changed the face of the country. If we did it then, we can do it. We're still people who believe in the country.
You're an incredible thing, too. Doris Kearns Goodwin, the best.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, presidential historian, and of course, author of numerous best-selling books, including An Unfinished Love Story, A Personal History of the 1960s, my favorite, Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln. Coming up after a quick break, State Auditor Diana Dizoglio is here. I am Sue O'Connell in for Margery Egan. He is Jim Browdy, and you are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Animation Block Party, dedicated to exhibiting independent, professional, and student animated works for over 20 years. Presenting Animation for Kids Festival August 9th at the Simmons Theater at the New England Aquarium. Learn more at animationblock.com. And M&M Skylights, installing and servicing the full range of commercial and residential V-Lock skylight products. More information about their installation process and consultations can be scheduled at mmskylights.com. And Creative Playthings, committed to supporting kids' outdoor active play this summer. Open for the Massachusetts sales tax holiday, August 9th and 10th. Showroom locations and swing set catalog available at creativeplaythings.com. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, presenting the 2025 season of Tanglewood, showcasing the beauty of incredible surroundings and world-class music. Tanglewood, where music goes for the summer. Tanglewood.org.
Welcome back to BPR, Jim Browdy and NBC 10 Boston, Sue O'Connell in for Margery. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow on the show, tomorrow Thursday, yes, Chuck Todd will join us, former host of Meet the Press, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, and a ton of other great people. So it's been 270 days since almost 72% of Massachusetts voters cast their ballots in favor of Question 1, authorizing the Massachusetts State Auditor to audit the legislature. So far, no audit. We're joined now at the BPL studio desk by State Auditor Diana Dizoglio for an explanation as to why she hasn't yet conducted that audit and what comes from here. Auditor Dizoglio, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, everyone. Appreciate that.
All right, so what have you been doing? Why is there no audit? What's happening? How's the relationship going with the AG? What's the standoff status? What's happening here, Auditor?
So we have been trying to conduct this audit since before the question was actually passed, but unfortunately we've hit roadblock after roadblock. We did actually conduct an audit, just for folks to know. Yeah. There is an audit. I think it's about 70 pages, more or less. It's up on
you're doing your job. I always have to tell people there are other things that are happening in the auditor's office which you are
besides
doing.
The audit of the legislature. Yes. Yes, please go to our website, massauditor.gov. You can check out all of the audits that we have been able to conduct. But yes, this audit of the legislature, we did conduct it. They just didn't participate in it. So if you'd like to see all of the questions that they did not answer, you can go to our website. It's an audit of the Massachusetts General Court, and that was conducted roughly around a year or so ago on the website. But we are trying to get access to basic financial documents and state contracting and procurement documents. This has been a source of contention in the state legislature, and also, yes, unfortunately, the Attorney General's office as well, who has repeatedly refused to state whether or not she will support us.
Can I just say, to be
yes.
clear, we talked to the Attorney General, as you know, whenever she's here monthly in great depth about this. My understanding of the most recent position she has, correct me if I'm wrong, is I need to know everything the auditor wants to look at before I do a ruling. I've asked her, and others I'm sure have too, why can't it be piecemeal? Why can't you say this is okay, that's not okay, and the next time she decides to audit, do the same sort of thing? She says, I believe that that's not the way she wants to operate. Is that a fair summary of where things stand?
Totally fair summary. That's not the way she wants to operate. She very much can have us go to court. Actually, the whole argument from the Attorney General's office up to this point has been essentially that we can't go to court with some hypothetical case about what we would like to audit. That's why we've actually made it crystal clear what we would like to audit. We have said we want these particular financial documents. These are just financial documents. There's no, delving into other issues right now. And we would like these state contracting and procurement documents to make sure that state contracts are getting executed legally and ethically. However, even though we repeatedly say exactly what we would like to audit, we repeatedly hear back more questions and zero commitment to represent us.
We should explain a little bit of back piece for those. You want to audit the legislature. You say to the legislature, I want to do X. The legislature stonewalls you, which they have basically done. The reason the Attorney General is involved in this is she's got to make a decision. Is she going to represent you in this effort to audit the legislature?
And let me just interrupt, Jim, sorry, be
go
clear.
ahead.
She's not going to represent us. I think that we just need to move forward.
She hasn't said that.
If she does, I will be jumping up and down celebrating the next time I come on here, but I have zero indication that the Attorney General is willing to represent us. We hadn't heard from her office when we asked that question since April. April, May, June, July, we're now in August. We just today, with it known that we're moving forward with a different attorney now, actually, just heard from the Attorney General's office today about the fact that they still would like some more questions answered. They still really hadn't made their decision. Maybe, maybe not, we can get our own attorney. And we need to be able to move forward to court here. This is dragging this out for way too long. The taxpayers deserve better. We need to bring this before the courts to get adjudicated, to get an answer on what we are able to audit or not audit. And move forward with the will of the 72% of voters who said yes to question 1.
Okay, so we read the Globe story this morning in which you mentioned you hired a lawyer with private money. We'll talk about the private money in a minute. And the quote was to explore options to bring the matter to court. What does that mean in English?
So essentially, we have been blocked from being able to access the courts because we are a state agency. And unlike everyday residents of the Commonwealth, state agencies have a different set of standards we have to follow, where we are required to be represented by the Attorney General's office, unless the Attorney General's office has rendered themselves unable or unwilling to act or has abdicated their responsibility to represent us. Because it's been so long and we've released over 150 pages of interactions, essentially begging for an answer about whether they're planning to represent us or not, still haven't gotten that answer. We are hoping to be able to go directly to the court and ask them to simply hear the case without having the formal permission from the Attorney General's office, since we don't feel like we're going to ever get that.
Okay, so we reached out to the Attorney General's office this morning about your decision to hire a lawyer. And here's the quote from their spokesperson over there. Massachusetts state law is clear that any lawful litigation brought by state officials, like you, or state entities must be authorized by the Attorney General's office. Any unauthorized litigation initiated by the auditor will be dismissed immediately. How do you respond to the AG?
It could, and it seems like that's what the AG wants to happen, unfortunately. I don't believe that the Attorney General supports us in our endeavor to get access to court. I believe that she would prefer that we didn't have access to court. We've asked for the legislature to ask the SJC for an opinion many times. They refuse to do so. I think that the number one goal of everybody involved in this on Beacon Hill is to keep us out of the courtroom so that we can't get a decision, so that this will linger on forever, essentially.
But do you think the AG is wrong, and it's like whatever it's called, one of those Hail Mary things by hiring this lawyer? Do you disagree with her legal analysis?
We agree that it is normally the case for us to have to go through the Attorney General's office. However, we are using precedent to be able to try
What's the
to
precedent?
get access
What's
to
the
the court.
precedent?
We'll have our legal counsel send you the details of that. But we essentially are trying to move forward to the court, pointing to the fact that the Attorney General is rendering herself unavailable, will not commit to allowing us to get a different attorney, will certainly not represent us in this case herself. And we've figured that out at this point. It's been quite a long time. I mean, we're talking about, we're going to go all the way into next year, into the next set of ballot questions, and still this is going to be lingering. That's not acceptable. So, we understand that people are nervous about representing us on this, that, it's very challenging to do so because the legislature votes on everyone's budgets. And we understand that there are potential political repercussions if people side with the people on this up on Beacon Hill.
How'd your budget fare?
But we need to move forward.
How'd your office's budget fare in the most recent legislative
So far, it was fairly equitable with other offices similarly situated besides the Attorney General's Office of Court, which did see a very significant bump this year.
We're talking to the auditor of the Commonwealth, Diana Dizoglio.
So, State Auditor, whenever I have a new colleague who moves to Massachusetts from another state, they're always shocked at how slowly things move on Beacon Hill. Not even this case, but just in general. And I often have to tell them the challenge is because there's so many Democrats. There's not a lot of stick. There's not a lot of challenge. It's just a lot of sitting around and talking about things they want to do. Understandably, if you're going to challenge that status quo, it's hard to find Democrats to do it with you because of the power that resides in Beacon Hill. So you, for this outside help, have tapped a Republican, a donor, who may in fact be running for governor at some point. What's your methodology here for reaching across the aisle to a Republican in Massachusetts who may actually be challenging Maura Healey or others for the governorship?
Yeah, I actually didn't reach out to the individual who's going to be funding the lawsuit. They reached out to me, offered to assist, offered to make sure that we could be represented by a law firm. We were frankly grateful for the outreach because we haven't received any help on Beacon Hill, unfortunately, from my side of the aisle on this issue. And look, this was a ballot question that got passed with 72% of the vote.
Which we should say is basically a landslide.
It is a
like
landslide.
Anything over 58% in any election is a landslide. This is like almost 100% landslide.
And I always appreciate the coverage on these issues. I do think it's important to add to the recent coverage on this that, GOP donors have also been Democratic donors as well. Some of the same folks that are mentioned in some of these stories have donated to the Speaker, the Senate President, and our Democratic governor as well. And yes, they've also donated to the ballot question. So a lot of these folks donate to both sides. But let me say this, the GOP endorsed the ballot question, so did the Massachusetts State Democratic Committee.
This is really important. Explain at the convention, right? Is that where this was? Explain what happened.
Yes, the Massachusetts Democratic State Committee took a vote. This was unanimously adopted to endorse the audit of the state legislature. Subsequently, also, the Progressive Mass endorsed this initiative alongside of Act on Mass, which is a progressive group, and yes, more conservative groups like the Pioneer Institute and Mass Fiscal Alliance and the Massachusetts GOP also supported this because, and I was loving the conversations with Doris previously because there's a lot of talk about that bipartisanship and these civil conversations being necessary. This is a good government issue. This is not a partisan issue, much like public records reform, Jim, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
Very near. We're the only state in America, the only state in America where every branch of government is exempt, or at least believed it's exempted from public records.
And
law.
when you ask why we're not covering something or doing more reporting, it's because it's almost impossible to get public records. We are one of the worst states in the country, if not the worst, for public access.
But what were we going to say? I'm sorry, Auditor.
Well, no, it's just a bipartisan initiative. Same as, folks who want public records access, both Democrats, Republicans, everybody in between wants access more to what's happening in their state government. And I actually have some good news on that front as well.
What is that news?
That news is that I'm working with a group led by former gubernatorial candidate, Democratic candidate Danielle Allen, and a transparency group. It's the Coalition for Healthy Democracy, and they are pursuing a few ballot questions, and one of those ballot questions is a question to reform the public records law to include the legislature and the governor's office to be subject to those public records laws as other state entities are. And we're really excited about that. I, for one, am very excited about that because I'm only asking the legislature for what is a matter of public record for every other agency. So if we can't get access to the documents before that time, maybe we'll be just passing a ballot initiative to reform the public records law, and you will all have access to those documents that I've been requesting.
Can I respond? We're getting a couple of texts from people saying, well, what you're not saying here, Jim, Sue, is this request for information through an audit from the auditor's office may be unconstitutional. Well, here's what the Attorney General herself said on our show back in July when we asked her about that issue. Here she is.
At the end of the day, the court will ask us, well, what are you attempting to audit? Because there are certain authorities the auditor has in terms of auditing the legislature, and certain authorities she does not.
Now, the reason we played that is because the Attorney General herself is saying, I'll repeat, there are certain authorities the auditor has in terms of auditing the legislature. So it's pretty clear as a big picture, it's not unconstitutional. She believes some things may be unconstitutional. You don't disagree. You don't know what is constitutional or not. You just want a determination. Is that correct?
What I think that we both agree on, but what's not being said, is that the financial documents and state contracts, which is all we are seeking to audit, that's all we're seeking to audit, that those are certainly not off limits, not just to me. They shouldn't be off limits to any taxpaying resident of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This is our tax dollars. When we ask for a receipt or for documentation about how our tax dollars were being spent, most state entities in Massachusetts, all cities and towns, have to give you that documentation because they are subject to the public records law. But because the legislature exempts themselves from the public records law, they not only don't have to give it to me, they don't have to give it to any of you. And our office is simply trying to get access to those financial documents and state contracting documents. That is certainly not an exercise of the powers of the legislature. Our auditors do not go in and sit in the seats of legislators and try to take a vote or insert themselves into conversations. They are just there to go in and to review information and then report on what is happening to all of you. And I think voters understand that, Jim. That's why 72% of you voted for this, because
including the governor and the attorney general, as they told us on the show.
That's what we heard during that time period, but I have seen absolutely zero support on this issue since that time period. It's been very disheartening. I really hope that changes at some point. Doesn't look like it's going to, so we do need to move forward. You know, it's not fun to be, as a Democratic statewide elected official, trying to work with my other colleagues who are also Democrats, but having them run away from me when I walk into the room, essentially. We have a lot of other business that we need to be attending to together. So this is turning into a distraction, and we're simply saying, if you're not going to support us, which clearly you're not, then please step to the side and just let us get access to the courts so that a judge can decide this matter. They can set the parameters, if there are any. We will follow what the courts say, as we should. You know, in this particular case, they are the final decision makers. Like it or not, what they say is going to have to go. And then we can all move forward. We can get this job done.
Can I, one other factual thing, I want to make sure this is accurate. I think it is while the Attorney General's position, the statement that we read here says any lawful litigation by, for example, a constitutional officer must be authorized by the Attorney General's office. There is precedent where the Attorney General's office has decided, for whatever reason, they can't fulfill their responsibility. I think it happened under Frank Bellotti, a former Attorney General, and they allow the appointment, or they appoint a special counsel. They might appoint the guy that somebody you've chosen, so they could do that. The one thing I don't understand, we talk constitutional crisis, Diana Dizoglio, all the time on the federal level. It seems to me, I don't want to be overly dramatic, that this is a constitutional crisis.
It is.
3/4 of the people, by the way, I don't even care if you hate this question.
Yeah, that's
not the issue.
Yeah.
The public voted for it by almost 72%.
It's a
That
threat
is
to
the
democracy.
law of the Commonwealth, and it seems to me that's a real serious problem.
It's a really serious issue, and agree with you on, let's put the question aside. Whether you like the audit, you hate the audit, let's put that to the side for a second. We had a question posed to the voters of this Commonwealth in which 72% went out and said, yes, we want this to become the law. This was not a recommendation. This was not just us giving, our opinion to the legislature. We voted this into law. This became a law. It is as though the governor herself signed this into law. And now what we have is the residents of this Commonwealth, voted for something to the tune of 72%, and the lawmakers themselves are turning back at us and saying, we're just going to break it. And then those tasked with enforcing the law are saying, we're not willing to enforce it, and we're going to drag this out into eternity and just never give an answer. So where are we going to go with this, folks, is what we have to start asking ourselves. And respectfully to all the conversations at the federal level, I am a Democrat elected state official here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I am no fan of Donald Trump's. I think a lot of the stuff that's happening at the federal level is abhorrent. That being said, we cannot as state elected leaders always pivot to what's happening at the federal level and never address these very real threats to democracy that are happening right here in the state of Massachusetts. We have an incredible federal delegation. We have Senator Warren, we have Senator Markey, we have great congressmen and congresswomen who are fighting those fights for us at the federal level. When are we going to pay attention as well to what is going on here in the state of Massachusetts when it comes to this very real threat to democracy, where our voices and our rights are being completely taken away from us? And, essentially, we talk about authoritarian regimes in D.C. What about here on Beacon Hill? There is an authoritarian regime in the legislature on Beacon Hill right now. No, I'm not popular up there because I say that, but it is the case. It is a dictatorial style of government. It is not democratic. It is, in fact, anti-democratic. And we're just trying to get before a court right now, and we can't even get our constitutional right to get an impartial hearing recognized by the top law enforcement agency of this Commonwealth. When you get arrested, what do they say? You have a right to an attorney. You have a right to an attorney. We are being told in the Office of State Auditor, it's not just us, it's the question that you voted for. We are being told as the people of this Commonwealth that we don't have a right to an attorney.
Maybe you should get arrested. Maybe that will get, and then you'll get a lawyer. Can I make two? Every time you're here, totally unrequested, I make recommendations, which my apologies. Two things. One, why don't you propose to, since there's a logjam with the Attorney General, that just like happened in the Everett Stadium thing with the Kraft Group, that there be a mediator that both sides agreed to, you and the Attorney General, and he or she or they decide what should be, what the ultimate end game should be here. That's one possibility. Second thing is, since legislators are hiding out on this thing under their leaders, why don't you challenge the legislators, if they really don't want to implement this thing, to vote to repeal it? Why don't you say to them, if they really don't want to implement it, why don't you vote to repeal the will of the 72% of the people, and challenge them so that the constituents have something to challenge their leaders on?
Yeah, they haven't voted to repeal it yet, per se, Jim, but they have voted.
They wanted the courage to repeal it.
They have voted against the audit, though. They have voted against following the law. And they instead are telling voters across the Commonwealth, long story short, that they voted to allow the Speaker of the House to let me choose a different auditor that the speaker can then control, pay a limited amount of money to, and then say what they're going to look at, what they're not going to look at, and pointing the finger back at my office and saying that we're being unreasonable because we are not going back to Mr. Speaker and saying, oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're so grateful, Mr. Speaker, for you breaking the law and allowing us to allow you to still control this audit.
Is he
so they did.
Is he talking to you in the parking lot yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay, well,
I'll smile and wave.
you want to sing for 30 seconds before you go to lift the spirit?
I would love to.
Okay, give it a
30 seconds. Go.
Here's Diana Dizoglio, the auditor, kind enough to entertain us on her way out the door. Take it away. What do you sing?
Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the MBTA going anywhere. She was singing, some will win, some will lose. Some were born to sing the blues. But don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. People, stay strong. Whoa. Just don't stop.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, is Massachusetts State Auditor Diana Dizoglio.
Keep up the fight, people.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, I want to repeat what we said before. You didn't have to vote for this thing. If you believe laws should be enforced, call your legislator, reach out to the Attorney General. Let's have the law complied with. I'm sorry. Take it away, Sue.
All right. We have just enough time for our Two More Things segment. I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com GBH News.
New data show Logan is doing great compared to other airports. I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, what's behind Logan's success? Ballot questions are being submitted today. One measure would allow voters to decide on rent control. And a new anti-poaching approach in South Africa involves adding radioactive material to rhino horns. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Most people heading to Martha's Vineyard go through Woods Hole. Dozens of ferries, thousands of vehicles, every day. It's an impressive scene, but for locals, it stinks.
There are times when I can't even breathe in my backyard. That whole area is blanketed in the diesel exhaust.
I'm Chris Burrell. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston, sitting in for Margery. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We only have a couple minutes left, but here's an opportunity for two more things. Sue, you go first.
Yes, my one thing is Colonel Jeffrey Noble, who is in charge of the Massachusetts State Police. Yeah. Many people wonder, what's the big hubbub about this Karen Reed thing? Why do we care? Well, why we care is because we're finding out a lot of things. And one of the things is that our state police apparently we're not really trained about bias, not the kind of bias where, you might judge somebody for how they look, but bias that you've already come to a conclusion about a case and you investigate it to meet that goal rather than find it. So what Noble has done is directed more than 500 members assigned to investigative functions to complete advanced investigative training. So that's the good news. The bad news is they weren't trained before, but it looks like Colonel Noble has been taking steps to move forward to make our Massachusetts State Police a better trained organization.
I want to say another positive thing about the state police, if I may. I was at Logan Terminal C the other day to pick up my wife, who was in Montana. The state cop helped me find a place to sit for 15 minutes rather than screaming at me and dropping F-bombs.
Yes.
That is a major development.
Yes, welcome to Massachusetts.
Thank you.
They yell at you.
Now, I'm going
What's
to spend,
your thing?
my one more thing is going to be a very brief thing about Trump's lie-a-thon yesterday, where I think he set an all-time record for most lies in the shortest period of time. Let's start with this one. Here is his explanation of why he had to fire the woman who was head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because she allegedly inflated the job numbers to make Biden look good right before the election. And then, here's what Trump had to say.
Just days before the election, they put out numbers that
it was like the country was on fire. It was doing so well. And then they did a revision about 2 weeks later, and the revision was down by almost 900,000 jobs. And I said, wow, supposing I would have lost, I would have blamed that, and people would have said I was a conspiracy theorist.
Now, Sue, if that was accurate, she should have been fired. Would you not agree?
Absolutely.
Not only is it not accurate, it is exactly the opposite from the truth. 4 or 5 days before the election, the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with horrible job numbers that were horrible for Joe Biden, and only after he lost the election did they elevate the numbers, the exact opposite of what Trump had to say. Talking about tariffs yesterday, he said we bought trillions of dollars in for the tariffs from the beginning of the year. Actually, it's 1/10 of that. He also said the deputy attorney general, well, actually, this is the one place where he told the truth. I got to cut it short. Here is his take on Democratic lawmakers in Texas. As we discussed, he lies originally, but then he does correct himself. And to say the truth, here's Donald Trump.
Well, I think they've abandoned the state. Nobody's seen anything like it, even though they've done it twice before. And in a certain way, it almost looks like they've abandoned the state. It looks very bad.
Let me repeat this again. Quote, nobody's seen anything like it. Pause for one beat, even though they've done it twice before.
Yes.
That's
All
a
right.
hell of a sentence there.
Thankfully, we're out of time for
We
this
are
segment,
out of time,
Jim.
thankfully,
Coming up
exactly.
after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to talk with two folks from MassGeneral about staying safe on the roads, in the water, and under the sun. I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH. We are live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com GBH News.
If you're a GBH member, you can access thousands of hours of PBS programs online with GBH Passport. If you're already a member, just register online today or become a member and sign up instantly at gbh.org/passport.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And MassGeneral Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And MIT Federal Credit Union, helping members achieve their financial goals with savings account options including high-yield money market accounts. Membership info and more at mitfcu.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on hour 3 of BPR. Swimming, driving, e-biking, barbecues, quintessential summer activities that also bring serious safety risks. As the dog days of summer wear on, we'll talk with two MassGeneral trauma prevention experts about how to keep kids safe on the roads and in the water before they head back to school in the fall.
I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. Then we're going to open up the phone and text lines for all things calendars. Do you live and die by your Google Calendar? Do you schedule work meetings, friendship hangs, even hookups and dates? How did you get here? And with everyday activities needing these color-coded block hold on our time, what are you doing? Or are you more spontaneous, lollygagging through the day? Schedules be damned. You can call or text next on hour 3 of BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. 5 soldiers at Fort Stewart were shot today in an active shooter incident on the Army installation in southeast Georgia. In a post on Facebook, Fort Stewart says the soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. The Army says law enforcement was dispatched to the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team just before 11 a.m. local time and that the shooter was arrested about 40 minutes later. The Army says there is no active threat to the community. Attorney General Pam Bondi has reportedly launched a grand jury investigation into the Obama administration's handling of the now decade-old probe of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. This was first reported by Fox News and confirmed by other outlets. NPR has not independently confirmed the reporting, and the Department of Justice declined to comment. But as NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports, it indicates a larger trend that blurs the lines between the Justice Department, which has historically been mostly independent, and the White House.
He's had tensions with past attorneys general. He's shown a willingness to fire them when they do something that he disagrees with. We know that there was tension, obviously, with Trump and his first attorney general, Jeff Sessions, the former Alabama Republican senator. And Sessions was the first Republican senator to endorse Trump's 2016 campaign. There was also a very bad falling out Trump had with Bill Barr after Barr told him the 2020 election wasn't stolen. Pam Bondi, she's taken a decidedly different approach.
NPR's Domenico Montanaro reporting. The administration has announced plans to cancel more research to develop mRNA vaccines, the type used to help fight COVID-19. Here's NPR's Rob Stein.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the federal government is canceling about $500 million in mRNA vaccine research. Kennedy had already canceled more than $700 million in contracts to develop an mRNA vaccine to protect the country against the next pandemic. Kennedy questions the safety and effectiveness of mRNA vaccines. Most experts say mRNA vaccines are very safe and effective. Kennedy says the administration is focusing on a different technology that he says mimics natural immunity. Most experts consider that to be outdated technology. Rob Stein, NPR News.
The White House plans to impose more tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. This morning, President Trump signed an executive order to tack on a 25% levy to Indian imports, in addition to the 25% tariff the United States has already imposed on its South Asian ally, which goes into effect this Friday. The order says the newest tariff will take effect in 21 days. Indian officials point to the United States previously encouraging India to purchase Russian oil to help stabilize global energy markets. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH studios in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. Boston is now a scene for the Texas redistricting fight. That's the sound of lawmakers from around the country on the steps of the Massachusetts State House today for a press conference. It was arranged by Texas Democrats who, as you've been hearing, fled the legislature in protest of a Republican effort to redraw congressional maps. Texas State Representative Armando Wally is one of the Democrats in protest. He accused the president and the governor of Texas of trying to reduce power in black and brown communities.
It's no coincidence when the president picks up the phone and calls Governor Abbott, he moves swiftly and targeted these 4 to 5 majority-minority seats.
The president has suggested the FBI may be called to bring Democrats back to Texas. And looking around at some headlines today, health officials on Martha's Vineyard are investigating after an infant was diagnosed with a serious tick-borne illness called Powassan virus. New research from UMass Amherst shows that the percentage of people experiencing problem gambling has risen by about 8% since 2022. And a renowned reviewer of Guinness Stout has declared that J.J. Foley's Cafe in Boston's South End has the best pint in the country after a nationwide search. We're looking at clouds with lows near 62 tonight. Right now it's cloudy and 72 in Boston. Boston Public Radio continues next.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Welcome to Hour 3 of BPR. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston. She's sitting in for Margery. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Login. Sue.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, Jim. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Chuck Todd, former host of Meet the Press. Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel is going to talk about what to do in the wake of these unbelievably deep and horrible Medicaid cuts, and some other wonderful people, too. So the American Automobile Association calls the time between Memorial Day and Labor Day the 100 deadliest days of the year. due to an uptick in summer car crashes. As our next guest will explain, it's not just new teen drivers taking the roads, but also quintessential summer activities, swimming, campfires, sunburns, e-bikes. While fun, they can also carry a lot of danger, particularly for young people. Joining us at the library to share tips on how to both enjoy the summer and keep your family safe these last few weeks and year-round is Toby Raybould. She's the Trauma Prevention and Outreach Program Manager at MassGeneral, and Dr. Michael Flaherty, a pediatric critical care physician in the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit at MassGeneral. Welcome to you both. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us.
So our family's motto when we go away or on vacation is #NoER. Right? So wherever we go, we don't want to end up in the ER. And it's usually because of a self-inflicted or stupid thing, an accident that we have engaged in participating in. So I know this always feels like one of those downer subjects. And before I became a parent, I was known as Auntie Careful because I was always saying, be careful, be careful. What would you say, one thing people, as we head into August, and the statistics bear how dangerous August is, how do you balance, before we get into the nuts and bolts here, being aware, careful, concerned, and having fun and encouraging your kids and family to go out and be kids? I'll start with you, Doctor.
Yeah, no, we are often referred to as the party poopers. But we want everyone to enjoy the summer, but to do so carefully. And a lot of it is common sense. There's good evidence about things that work. Helmets while riding a bicycle, wearing a seatbelt, watching children and having layers of safety when they're in a pool or a body of water. So a lot of it feels like common sense, but just being hyper aware that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, we know things that work, and we just have to keep people safe.
Toby, can we focus on the water safety first? Because I think that, we all know the situation of being at a pool party with a bunch of kids. There's a bunch of adults. And because we're not each assigned a child, we're not watching a child, and that's often so dangerous. What are some tips, what are some misconceptions people have about water safety, and how can you remedy those?
That's a great point. One of the misconceptions is that it takes longer to drown. A child can be underwater for as little as a few seconds and get so much water in their lungs that they can't breathe. The other misconception that comes to mind is those water wings and the little floaty things that the kids have. That can be helpful, but it is no replacement for parents being within an arm's reach of their child at all times. I think when you think about summer safety, if your child trips and falls on the grass while you're playing a sport, maybe they'll cut their knee. But if your child wades out into the water too far, there's really no coming back from that. One of my colleagues said that she has a rule with her children that there's no back talk and no questioning if their parents say something to them in the pool or at the beach. Mm-hmm. Not that they should be back talking anyway, but that in that particular scenario, if I say come out or whatever.
So, Mike, I am a big mandate guy, which a lot of people hate, in a world where we're not supposed to mandate anything. Isn't the solution, rather than waiting to the moment where you have to do the responsible things that Toby was describing, like make sure you watch your kid, maybe wear a vest as opposed to those little wing kind of things, how about requiring that every kid learn how to swim, which may not prevent all disasters in the water, but obviously would reduce the number?
It would certainly help, but as with any injury, it's a multimodal approach. And so even children that learn how to swim, sometimes it gives this false sense of confidence to parents that, okay, my child got swim lessons, they know how to swim, I'm going to let them go to the quarry or let them be out in the ocean by themselves. And often even the best swimmers can't survive some of these rip tides.
Is drowning is it obviously any case when you read about it? We read a couple stories this morning. It's so painful. You can't imagine your kid being here and then gone while having fun. Is it, on the grand scheme of catastrophes for young people, where is it?
So it remains the leading cause of death for kids 1 to 4 in our country.
Really?
Yep, still. And far more prevalent in areas where swimming is year-round and where the weather is a little bit warmer. In New England, it peaks when you would expect it, Memorial Day all the way through Labor Day. But it's still a serious public health issue, despite all of the efforts we've tried to combat this.
Okay, so Toby, I'm sorry,
I want to underscore what you said, though, Jim, too, and agreeing with both of you as well. Like, we were just up in Maine, and my daughter has had swimming lessons her entire life. She was certified by the Red Cross when she was 5, and as she was coming in, she got a little tired, and she was doing the down and up which they taught her to do. And she got to the deck. I said, oh, you did the thing that they taught you to do. And she said, what are you talking about? Like, it was part of her DNA that's how I swim.
Yeah.
So it is impossible. It's important.
So what's another high on your list concern around safety issues or lack of safety for particularly young people?
One thing I want to mention about drowning and swim lessons before we move on is the mayor of Boston and also the governor's office. They have free swim lessons. They got a big grant this year, and they had them at YMCA's and Boys and Girls Clubs.
That's great.
But it's $230,000 grant versus the number of kids who need swim lessons who can't afford it. So it's always going to be an issue. I totally agree. Did you want to switch to teen driving?
Well, let's do driving. Yeah.
So, like you said, this is the 100 deadliest days for teen drivers. They have less driving supervision over the summer. They drive more often. They have other teens in the car, and unfortunately, wearing no seat belts. I talked to one of our colleagues at AAA, and they said several of the recent teen driving deaths, the teens were not wearing seat belts.
And I assume we know there were particularly for people of a certain age, there were ballot questions, there was lots of contest back and forth. But I don't know if you guys know, is not wearing a seatbelt a primary offense? Meaning, can a cop? It's
a secondary offense.
Explain what that means. Explain what primary versus secondary means.
So a primary offense, the police can pull you over for that reason alone. Right. And if it's a secondary, they pulled you over because your taillight was out and they noticed that you don't have your seatbelt on. They can give you a ticket.
So if they see a teenager driving by without a seatbelt, they just have to essentially wave it off and allow that kid to continue putting themselves and other people at a risk. What changes, Mike, would you make in terms of, if any, around driving issues for teenagers?
Yeah.
16 years old is when you're entitled. And then you have a junior license for a short period of time?
Yep, for 6 months.
Where you can't have other people in the car. Is that what it is?
Yep. There's limitations on driving at night. You need a supervisor. You can't drive any passengers under the age of 18.
Cell phone use.
And that's probably the biggest thing I do. I'd get rid of the electronic devices. Driving safety and safety on the roads, some of the biggest public health successes of our time have been in reducing deaths on the road. And you see this really great trend and dramatic decrease, and it starts to go up in the early 2000s, and it continues to go up, and it seems to be related to the fact that everybody's got something in their hand or on a screen. And really, there's just no place for any teen driver to have a phone in the car. Put it on Do Not Disturb. Make that your default. The text, the call can wait.
Well, theoretically, that's illegal. It's another enforcement issue, by the way. Not theoretically, it is illegal to be using your cell phone while your thing is moving.
The other challenge I think parents have is that,
I should say it's not illegal to use it. It's illegal to have a handheld kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the other challenge parents have, having just not too long ago gone through the driving instruction, is it stinks, right? They don't really learn very much. And even if, I drove with my daughter for hours and hours and hours, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I can't, do some things that are, you can't teach some things from a parent. And then we put them out on the road, and then, you might have a teen or 17-year-old who says, listen, I have a license. The state said I'm good enough to drive. I have had training. I'll see you, and it boggles my mind about the poor training, and we say that's enough.
Yeah, and imagine Massachusetts has one of the most stringent graduated driver licensing laws in the country, and even that's not enough. That's
what does that mean?
Period.
What do you mean?
So graduated driver licensing is this stepwise approach to fully independently driving.
I see.
And so that's this junior operator law in Massachusetts, not driving during high-risk hours at night, not having passengers in the car, sort of getting that extra hand held during this period of transition to being independent. And it helps, and certainly we've seen dramatic decreases in deaths based on states with strong graduated driver licensing laws, but it's not enough.
Jamie, his kid is our lead producer, is 10 years away from driving a car. I'm sure he hopes it's 30 years away from driving a car. Asked a question about these hands-free things.
Yeah.
What is the law for teenagers? Can they even do hands-free? They can't do hands-free either. They can't do any cell phone use. Is that, Toby, is that what you're nodding?
The law, while you have your junior operator, you can't use a cell phone at all.
Even
and
hands-free.
Then for adults, it's hands-free.
Okay.
But
go
you can
ahead.
imagine how difficult that is to enforce.
Right.
If
It's impossible.
someone else is in the car, it's sort of, just by having the law does reduce use a little bit, but it's really hard to enforce.
Okay, let me tell you what's not hard to enforce that puts me totally over the edge is whether it's on an e-scooter, which we'll talk about in a minute, which I know are particularly dangerous, or a bicycle, people running red lights. And as far as I know, a person on any kind of two-wheeled thing is subject to the same laws as somebody driving a car. It is enforced virtually not at all. And two, because we are in a state, correct me if I'm wrong, that allows cyclists or not to have to wear a helmet when they're an adult. Is that correct?
I believe
is
that's
that
correct,
after
yeah.
16 years old, it makes it very difficult for a cop to know whether someone's 15 and is required to wear a helmet or 18, which means in most cases a young person not wearing a helmet is allowed to do what they do. Is there any reason why there's not a law that says if you're on one of those things, whether you're 80 or 18 or 14, you shouldn't be wearing a helmet?
I don't know of what the reasons are currently, but I agree that strong legislation is necessary. But it goes to the same point that it has to be multimodal. You know, we have to teach our children from an early age and set the example for them that when you get on that bike, you wear a helmet. No questions asked. Doesn't matter if it's a little scooter or an electric bicycle. And use that also as an approach in combination with legislation, safer roads, better laws.
How much public education is there done, I don't mean in a school, well, maybe in a school, around these common sense safety things, Toby, that the two of you are talking about?
I believe in high school there is one semester of health education.
That includes this?
Sort of. I mean, they have to do CPR, they have to do drug prevention. I mean, it's a small amount.
Okay, let's talk about it not just by e-scooters, which seem to be terror machines for the most part. Either of you can start. How bad is that situation?
It's becoming a crisis. I think that it's a great example of technology growing and emerging and outpacing our ability to know what's safe and how to actually mandate or legislate rules around it. These devices are all grouped under this term micromobility, which includes these e-scooters, e-bikes, these hoverboards. And the way we define them and classify them, it's different in just about every state. There are some federal classifications, but it's really hard to know, like based on speed or how much it assists you when pedaling, what is an e-bike, what should be treated like a bicycle, and what should be treated like a motorcycle. And that's where a lot of the issues are coming up now.
I live in a student neighborhood, and I'm just so apprehensive about them coming. I'm always apprehensive about them coming and going, but coming back. And many of the freshmen are going to come, and they're going to be on their scooters, they're going to be on their whatever they call them, wheelies, and they are going to be going down Marcella Street in Roxbury at a high speed without a helmet on, and I want to pull them over and call their mother. I mean, I feel like a Karen out there. I'm not worried about me, as I should be, because some of them are on the sidewalk, but it just, it's just they're free. They're living in Boston, they're on their scooter, they're not wearing their helmet, and it just, I have my heart in my throat every time I see them.
And it's great, it's a great means of environmentally friendly, sustainable transportation when done right. But it's just that last piece. It's when done right, and being able to enforce helmet legislation, making sure they're not on trails with other bicyclists, making sure they're not around pedestrians and on sidewalks and creating more injuries. And just ensuring that the youngest children riding these, you imagine some of them can go up to 30 miles per hour, and trying to get to that speed on a bike without a helmet or any personal protection is just fraught with risk for injury, and we're seeing that now more and more.
What do you say to a parent who comes to you and says, I agree with every single word you've both said, I've tried to talk to my kid, and I'm talking to a brick wall. Give me some guidance as to how I should convince that kid that these so-called common sense safety things are easy, won't interrupt their fun, all that sort of stuff. Toby, you want to start?
I was thinking about what you said. This is a no emergency department vacation. I mean, I say that to my kids. It would be embarrassing if I had to bring you to the hospital for an injury. So it is really hard because they know best. I have a junior operator driver, and
do they listen to you?
Well,
I'm serious. Do they?
For the most part, he said he's one of the few friends who doesn't allow other passengers in the car. He said his other friends do.
Will he go in a car with somebody else who's driving?
I don't know.
Why don't you ask the kid?
Let's call him right now.
Okay.
Let's get him on the line.
So what do you say? Other than Sue's family's great line, it's a line. It's one line. What do you say to the parent? What advice do you give him?
So one of the things about e-bikes and e-scooters, the injuries from an version of that versus a regular one are so much more severe. You have to think it goes faster, it's heavier. So even if it doesn't come to you in the beginning that I should really wear a helmet, I guess it's just talking to your community and sharing this information.
You know what we had luck with is showing you the idea of how heavy a vehicle is escaped my daughter completely. Like it didn't even occur to her that, and she's very smart, how heavy the car was. And I made her watch on YouTube how long it takes certain size cars to stop as they crash, and how you have to make sure you're leaving enough space if you have to slam on the brakes. But it was, to the education issue, it isn't even something that I think she ever thought of, or even I thought of, I think.
There's a program, I forget where it is, in Massachusetts called In Control, where they teach kids that where you get in the car and you stop, and then you see next to you where you would have slammed into the car. I think that's really important information to share with them.
So, Doctor, a texter anonymously says, actually, statistics suggest the helmet does not lower the chances to be hurt riding a bike. I find that hard to believe. Is that person right?
No, there is very strong evidence that helmets reduce traumatic brain injury. There is some studies to suggest that it increases the risk of facial injuries. But I can fix your face. We can put that back together. I can't fix your brain. And that goes to how do we educate children? And if you have to choose your battles, I always just focus on the brain injuries. Lots of things can be fixed. We can fix broken bones. We can suture. But a traumatic brain injury, often there's no coming back from that.
Speaking of traumatic brain injury, we were talking to Trenny Casey, who's a sports reporter at NBC Sports Boston yesterday, about this horrible case out of Sharon, where a young football player at Sharon High School had some sort of concussion. They went back without one of those baseline test kind of things. There weren't adequate supervision or staffing. They had another serious injury, and the young man, who sounds terrific and full of life despite his limitations, has paralysis and other serious problems. We saw the shooter in New York City the other day claim, we don't know because he was alive at the time and you can't diagnose it while you're alive, that CTE, which we've heard a lot about in the case of particularly pro and high-level college football players, is a problem. But one of the things we learned from the fabulous Concussion Legacy Foundation with Dr. McKee and Dr. Cantu, it's not that one horrible hit, it's repetitive hits, even of lower grade, that create a real problem. And I'm sure you know that the Concussion Legacy Foundation has recommended that you stick with flag football, not tackle football, till you're at least 14. While the brain is not fully developed, it's obviously more developed than it is when they're 11. Is that like a losing battle with parents whose kid is dying to play football? Literally dying to play football.
Yeah, I mean, football is a part of American culture, and it's really hard, especially in other communities, even outside of New England, where football is a part of everyday life, to get that point across. And again, it's picking your battles. It's if you're going to do it, we have to make sure that we have helmet regulations, that we have good return to play regulations. It's finding whatever strategies we can if children or teens and adolescents are going to play these sports, that they're protected as best we can.
People stop telling me that their middle schoolers are playing football, because what I tell them is, why don't you have them just go stand in front of the door and bang their head against it for an hour every day, and let's see how they turn out. And if he's okay with that, let him play football.
But where's the, unlike, for example, the kid who's going to go on the scooter, wear the helmet, and you can't convince him to do it. I'm quite sure I'm right, that if your kid who's underage wants to play football, at least at a public school, I assume at a private school, you got to sign a form. What stops the parent from not signing the form until the kid is 14 or whatever years old? I mean, it seems to me that part of the problem here is as much the parent as it is the understandably rebellious young kid.
It's totally the parent.
Sort of like, we talk a lot, which is not your area of expertise. Margery and I are obsessed with the fact that you can be 100 years old in Massachusetts and not have taken a driver's test for 84 years since you were 16. It's just, it is unbelievable. Why did I bring that up? Oh, because the adult children of old people say, you try taking the keys away from your father who sees that, or your mother, as their last example of independence. It's a lot different with someone who's lived a whole life and a kid. What motivates a parent to give up and essentially say, okay, go put your head at risk in a football game when you're 12 years old?
That's a really good question. Both of my kids played flag football, which we were fortunate enough to have our town have as an option.
Was that a hard task to convince? No, they were okay with it.
I said, you're not playing football.
Oh, you did? And how did they react to that?
They said, all right. And, that it was that and hockey, which I just couldn't, bear knowing the injury rate for those. But one thing that somebody said to me, not related to my children that I think had an impact was all these parents who say, well, my kid's going to get a full ride to college playing football.
No, they're not.
They're not. It's something like 5% of kids get any sort of scholarship for sports, and 1% get a full ride.
I always like to ask them to name the kid from their high school that went on to get that, and any year that they know. And there's, luckily there's Mike Eruzione from Winthrop. We just name him all the time. That's all we have.
For those who are too young, scored the key goal in the 1980 Miracle on Ice against the Russians. So before you go, only have a minute left. Is there something we missed that it's important for people to know? Doctor or Toby? Mike or Toby? Toby, do it.
I forgot to mention something about autism and drowning.
Please.
Children who have autism are 160 times more likely to drown. And the state just released a great website, mass.gov/autism water safety, with lots of recommendations for community, emergency responders, everyone to help children with autism not end up in the water.
Say it one more time. What's the website? mass.gov/what?
Autism water safety.
Great. Thanks for what you do, you two, and thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Say it with me. No ER on the vacay.
No ER on the vacay.
Toby
That's
Raybould.
a great bumper sticker. I like that.
I'm going to copyright that. Toby Raybould and Dr. Mike Flaherty, thank you so much. Coming up after this quick break, we're ending our Wednesday with you. The college kids are going wild in Google Calendar, scheduling everything from classes to hookups. So we're going to open the phone and text lines to you for a conversation about how you stay on top of your personal schedule, whether it's your handy-dandy notebook or a giant wall iPad in your kitchen. I'm Sue O'Connell in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy, and you are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
New data show Logan is doing great compared to other airports. I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, what's behind Logan's success? Ballot questions are being submitted today. One measure would allow voters to decide on rent control. And a new anti-poaching approach in South Africa involves adding radioactive material to rhino horns. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Boston Children's Museum, featuring 100 Acre Wood, a Winnie the Pooh experience. Visitors can sort honey and acorns with Pooh Bear and Piglet, bounce with Roo and Tigger, or read one of Owl's favorite books. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org. And Newbury Court, serving Concord, Massachusetts for 30 years as a not-for-profit continuing care retirement community dedicated to older adults. More at newburycourt.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston in for Margery. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow on the show, Chuck Todd, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, and a bunch of other people. We'll hope you'll join us. This is an issue strong feelings about, which is a good thing for the show. There's a piece out in the Wall Street Journal, the resource for staying on top of trends of the youth, apparently, claims that Gen Z loves scheduling things in Google Calendar. But the kids aren't just using the app to schedule their class times and dentist appointments. They're also sending invites to friends to hang out through Google Calendar. They're sending invites to hook up with each other through Google Calendar. And crucially, they're blocking out hours of their day to come to the Boston Public Library to watch their favorite radio show host dissect what people 30 plus years their junior are supposedly up to. Easy for you to say, Jim. Of course, obsessively documenting and planning your day isn't exclusive to Gen Z. Some of us have been doing this for our whole lives. And for what? That's our question. Calendars and you at 877-301-8970. Is it a sense of common control, knowing you know exactly where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing 2 weeks in advance? And where do you keep all that information? A Google Calendar, a little red book, like the one that Margery can't find every day, all those kinds of things. Or are you someone who's totally opposite, no calendars for you, chaos and spontaneity are what give you joy? 877-301-8970. Explain your behavior, Sue O'Connell.
So in our household, and this is not a product endorsement, and I had to purchase it, and I'm not getting it for free, is we have a app and a display screen from a company called Hearth, Hearth.
Correct.
And in it, we combine all of our Google Calendars or our Outlook, whatever we use. And every day we have each individual's calendar of what they're doing. It's something that works for little kids as well as adults. It can be as minute as brush your teeth, or it can be as big as put the laundry away. And
As
every
big as
day
put the laundry
we
away.
check it. We don't do anything that it tells us to do. We just ignore it and move it to the next day. So we have yet to unpack from our vacation. We have yet to put the laundry away, a whole bunch of things. But it is a center place so that today they know where I am at home. And when I get home, I can check and see that absolutely nothing has been done that I have inputted into the Hearth. So
Well, let me
there
just
you
say
go.
it's very anal of you,
Yes.
but it's a beautiful thing. And by the way, I do a variation of a thing. I took about 25 years ago, I took a course. You ever heard of Franklin Covey?
Yes, I did.
Okay, it's this, I don't know what they do in general, but what they do is they have these date books that allow you to schedule kind of things. And one of their pieces of advice, which I have found to be very helpful, is premised, these aren't their words, they're mine, on the notion that when you achieve something, no matter how small it is, it provides positive enforcement. And then you say, well, I'm going to do the next thing that seems too difficult. So, for example, and this is really anal, they say, put down, if you're going to brush your teeth at 7:10 tomorrow, because when you've done it, you check it off, and it may sound ridiculous, but you end up with this feeling of accomplishment, even in small ways. So you do the next thing second. Secondly, I'm going to describe, I think I've done this on my air, the most brilliant calendaring move I've done in my lifetime that I'm quite proud of. I don't know if I've ever told you this thing. I used to say yes to every request to do anything because I thought I was guilt-ridden. It was the way to go. I try to say yes to fewer things so that you sort of have a life. Here's what I do when I say no, which is very hard to do. I go to the date in my calendar that let's say it would be October 7th at 7 p.m. I write in my date book the thing that I said no to at 7 to 9 p.m. I put it in square brackets so I know I don't have to do it. And you get double positive reinforcement. One, you said no up front. And two, when the occasion that you're not going to happens, you say to yourself, I could have been at this torturous event from 7 to 9. Instead, I'm eating a liverwurst sandwich on the couch watching CNN.
That's great.
Doesn't get much better than that.
It makes you feel good. You know, I will say, because the article also is talking about young people, my daughter, who's 25, she organizes every single second of our life within a breath. So on Saturdays, we have to make the meal plan for the entire week. We have to plan, you know, in this story, they're talking about how kids, if they're, whatever they do, they want to put every single thing in it. I think, again, this is what we have done. We have damaged an entire generation. They're not going out. They're not having sex. They're having dinner at 6 p.m. And now they are organizing their lives. Like, the whole process of organizing is the event. For me, I don't want to spend too much time on the process. Whether it's sitting on the couch eating a liverwurst sandwich or going out to the event.
Red onion. Yeah.
There you go.
So let me just say, I disagree with you. When you say young people are not having sex, I don't know that they're not, so I'm not disagreeing with that part. But in all seriousness, in that Wall Street Journal story, they schedule sex.
Yeah,
they schedule hookup. They say they invite someone on Google Calendar like 6 to 7 and meet them in the dorm room. So even that is scheduled. Now, admittedly, spontaneity sort of goes out the window. But I have to say, I am really a pro minutia on calendar kind of person. The satisfaction level, maybe it's not when you don't do anything, but it is don't do anything on the list. When you do accomplish some things, it is really a positive force, I think, in your life. Let's take some calls. 877-301-8970. Calendars or no calendars, and you. Where do you want to go, Sue?
Let's talk to Emmy in Burlington. Hey, Emmy, welcome.
Hello, Emmy. Hi.
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 I am 22, and I am the Gen Z who schedules every moment of the calendar that you're talking about. So I have scheduled visits to the VPL. I do schedule hookups. I do schedule like every meal I eat. And I don't think it's because I'm not doing anything and because my friends aren't doing anything. I think I do it so I can do more. You know, if I have dinner between 6 and 7, then I can go to the library between 7 and 9, and then from 9 to 10, I can go hook up with someone.
Emmy, what happens if you have a change in plans? Like let's say you wanted to go someplace and you get there and it's closed, but you had, you know, booked up this hour and a half to be there. Does that throw your whole schedule off, or are you left with like, oh my God, I have to be spontaneous. What am I going to do?
I think that's kind of why I love the Google Calendar, because I can really just move the boxes around. when I had a physical calendar, it was a little more like, oh my goodness, what do I do? But the Google Calendar is wonderful.
I find this, this is also, there's always people in every generation who are like Emmy. What I find fascinating is I think we've raised an entire generation like this. Emmy, are all your friends like you?
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, we're sending each other Google Calendar invites to, like, remember to go to lunch next week, things like that, yeah.
By the way, you are the perfect first caller for this discussion. I love you for it. Emmy, thanks for the call. Call us again. 877-301-8970. You know what I was going to ask her, but then I didn't because it's clear she was relaxed. I was going to say, does it cause you more stress when you have
There's
this?
a joy. She's
but she is
joyful.
exactly.
She is
and as she
exuberant.
says, you can fit more in because she has an organized kind of life.
Yeah.
As opposed
I
to a
hate
sloppy
doing it.
one.
Yeah, when my daughter sits down and says, let's make the list of the week, it causes me incredible anxiety. I just want to go do it. So we have another Gen Z, Dylan in the Back Bay, who texted. He says, I graduated college 3 years ago and used GCal, that's what they call in the Google Calendar, Jim, the kids, GCal extensively to keep track of classes and buildings. Now as a working professional, I still use it to coordinate schedules with my wife, although it can bring on some planning anxiety.
There was that text that almost caused me to ask Emmy that question,
About
but
the
she
anxiety.
apparently was
She's-
anxiety-free.
she's
You
filled
know,
with
I'm
it.
looking, I have my top sheet of my notes for the day is about things I have to do. Now, let me tell you, talk about anal. You know what's on this list? 5 o'clock, take out the garbage. Now,
Do you really have that on the list?
Right here. And now,
Does it have to happen at 5 o'clock, or is it just a reminder that garbage pickup is tomorrow?
It's the latter. But let me just say this. This is a good example of what I'm talking about. Garbage pickup for the 30 years, whatever number of years I lived in the same, is the exact same day. Yeah. So the likelihood of my forgetting to do it is practically zero if I didn't write this down. But this gets back to what I did before. Do you know what I do after I take out the garbage? I circle
You're a good boy,
the thing,
Jim.
and I
Good
look
boy.
at this thing, and there are a bunch of circles, and I say, I've accomplished something. I'm serious.
You know what
I've
I do?
accomplished something today.
I have on my hearth that the composting has to go out tonight.
Is it going out?
They pick it up by 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then no one takes it out, and then I yell at everybody all day Thursday. So
That's
it works
fabulous.
out perfectly.
Excellent. Let's go to Jake in Mansfield. You're next. We're talking calendars here on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Oh, thanks for taking my call.
Hi.
Hi.
By the way, before you go ahead, Hannah, our colleague, just wrote, and she's a tad younger than I am, said the exact same thing. She needs a calendar reminder. Well, she needs it. I don't need it. Reminder to take out trash and compost every week. Then I can check it off every Wednesday. So productive.
That's
Thank
very
you very
good,
much.
yes.
I'm sorry, Jake. Take it away.
No worries. Just a teacher's perspective.
Please.
We have a calendar from the district. We have a calendar from our principal, our teachers working group with our students for extracurricular. The last thing I want to see when I get home is my time down to 3-minute intervals and then getting a text message, oh, you didn't get the update? That's a working group. It's the absolute last thing I want to do is look at a calendar, a list of these are the things, and then I get satisfaction crossing it off. That's totally fine.
I hear
but
you,
to
Jake.
have a calendar for my personal life, no way.
I have a very loose personal calendar, and I think it's because I have to be on Teams, I have to be on Slack, I have to respond to texts on 2 different phones, I have 5 emails, and then Jamie, the producer, who just randomly calls me with, hey, can we talk? And I'm like, now? I don't know. So I feel you, Jake. I feel you.
It's enough to drive you cuckoo bananas.
Yeah.
That was excellent, Jake. Thank you. Dean Ashland says, my philosophy is never do today, which you can put off till tomorrow. So I'm continually moving tasks to the next day or the next week, or even better, the next month. So there you go. I mean, there are different kinds of... By the way, that Jake who just called, the difference is he has a really structured day. If you have a really structured day where you have to stick to your... like a teacher, like he is, I can understand when you're in your real life kind of thing, you want freedom. But if you're not, I mean, our lives, even though you have to do the show from 11 to 2.
Yeah, we have deadlines of places
But
that
having
we have
said
to
that,
be.
it's a pretty free day, is it not?
Yeah.
Except for the time when you got to perform or whatever it is
We
do?
Yeah, let's not tell everybody how free we are, Jim, just wandering around here doing nothing. But I do
Exactly.
think it's nice also
That's a good point.
to look back on the paper calendars. Like, I remember I used to have a...
Thank you, right here,
and
thank you.
I would write everything that I had done that day
Yeah.
in high school and college. and then look back and go, boy, I was having a lot of fun last year. I'm not right now.
So can I tell you something else? Another good reason to do this. I don't have a book as such. I type up my notes every day for things I have to do, and then I save it because you never know. And I started about 20 years ago doing this. You never know when you're going to need those things again. So the appropriate question for you is, you've been doing it 20 years because you don't know when you'll need it again. That's about 7,500 days. How many times have you referred back to your notes from a particular day because you needed to see them? What's the answer to that question?
I never have.
Never is the answer to the question. Never once.
Never once.
Never once. Yet my box is like totally full with this crap, etc.
Right. Let's talk to Mary in Framingham. Hello, Mary.
Hello, Mary in Framingham.
Hi, guys. You can hear me okay? I'm in the
Perfectly.
car.
Perfectly, yep.
Okay, great. Well, I want to tell you that Google Calendar is not just for the young generation.
Yeah.
I'm 73,
Yep.
and I use it like a diary. I block out 6 to 9 a.m., I color it yellow, and I use it for my daily weight and everything I eat. If I'm going to buy something at Marketplace, or next door, I make a note and say, go pick up shoes in Peabody. Go pick up table in Natick. So I don't forget. Otherwise, I would totally forget.
Well, wait a second. If you didn't write down what you if you didn't write down what you ate, you'd forget to eat.
I can't hear you.
If you didn't write,
forget to eat.
whatever. That's
I
hopeless.
forget.
Okay, Mary, the connection is sort of
Yeah, we're losing
dissolving.
you, but-
Thank you. That was an excellent
You know,
call.
the
We
one
appreciate
challenge
it.
we have with this electronics
What's
is
that?
that, of course, it's not all completely private, right?
Yeah.
You know, we put stuff in our Google Calendar, we use Google Docs. They can see what we're doing, you know, so it's...
Who's they exactly?
The Googles.
The Googles,
The Google
yeah.
people can
Yeah,
see what we're
Googles,
doing.
yeah.
But, you know, you also, I don't know if you've got a notebook you've left behind and then be horrified to know that someone might be flipping
But
through
I'm looking
it,
at this, for example, right before I do
Take out
the
trash.
garbage at 5 o'clock, which I'm okay with people knowing about. You know what I'm doing at 4:30? Fixing a toilet seat. It's right there, 4:30 this afternoon.
What a life.
Fixing a toilet seat, because that gives you great
That- you could
satisfaction
check
too.
that off, too,
Here's
Jim.
DJ in Washington, D.C. Jim, my calendar from January still has on it that the Ukraine war will be over and grocery prices will be lower, but I've yet to circle them as completed. That's
Yep.
a very
There we go.
fine point. Are you, by the way, your hearth thing, where you say, I assume partially in jest that you accomplished nothing on the list. You accomplished something.
Yeah.
Is it would seem to me if you're accomplishment free from the list and there's a big display in your kitchen, that can be a downer.
You
Is
can
that
put pictures on it.
Oh, you
So we
can?
have pictures of our late dog Inca, who
I don't know about Inca.
Inca lived to be 18.
Wow.
Yes, I would carry Inca around. She could walk for
Oh,
a while,
that's
so
so
I carried her
sweet.
with a little thing. And when the coyotes would come at me, I would lunge her at them as she barked to keep them away.
Oh, that's sort of cute
Yeah,
kind of thing.
you could put a photo on it, and it is really just an elaborate Google Calendar with a big screen. But because it's different, because it's not like a Google or an Apple thing that we all
Yeah.
use, it makes us all go to it. It's got kind of a counter.
Go to it, but you don't do anything on it.
I do it, and I add everything in it, and then
Oh,
I
you
get
do?
to yell at it right there. You can imagine what a joy I am to look
Anonymous texter says, I have a reminder on my calendar to look at my calendar, which
you
I
go.
think is an issue. Did we do Jack on the road?
No,
I can't
let's get
remember.
Jack.
Hello, Jack.
Hey, how are you?
Excellent, thank you.
I'm kind of a hybrid. I have a to-do list, which is a file I keep open of stuff that I have to do, and then I have Google Calendar. I used to be a consultant, so the first rule of consulting is always know where you need to be tomorrow.
Right.
So that's in Google Calendar.
Okay.
My daughter is 26. She schedules everything 12 months in advance.
12 months?
She can't take a weekend off because she hasn't scheduled it. It'll be 3 months before she can help me do the yard.
So what do you make of this, Jack? I'm sure she's a wonderful young person. What do you make of this?
I don't know what to make. Oh, well, she's OCD. So there are a lot of issues there.
Yeah.
It's who she is, and I work with it.
All
Okay.
right, Jack, good luck to you.
And to her, Jack, thank
Good
you
luck to both
kindly
of you.
for how far do you schedule things in advance? Obviously, you have an appointment, you schedule the appointment. How far do you schedule minute kinds of things
Like
in
what?
advance.
Like what?
Like, for example, as a kid, that's not minute. I want to go away that particular weekend in
that
4
sort of
months.
stuff. Yeah, that's
you don't have a scheduled thing. You just want to go away that weekend.
Yeah, no, we will schedule that
We will.
as far in advance as we possibly can.
How many days in advance do you schedule brushing your teeth?
I don't brush my teeth. No,
You
I
don't?
I'm only kidding.
Yes.
No, I don't need. See, that's just. I think part of it too is like I don't really need. I don't need to accomplish things or hit goals in order to feel good about what I'm doing, which was a problem in
that's very
school
healthy.
because I didn't care about getting A's.
Oh.
Like that didn't mean.
What'd you care about?
I just cared about learning stuff, and
You did?
I did, and famously talking about President Polk in American history,
Loved him.
junior year or senior year at Revere High School, I did a project completely the wrong way, which was an extraordinary letter from Benjamin Franklin to his son, and I burnt the paper, and I used a seal, and I bought a calligraphy pen, and I did the assignment the completely wrong way, so I got a D, and the teacher said to me, if you had done it the right way, you would have gotten an A, and I went, oh well.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't care if I get a little star. I'm not being critical of you, Jim, because clearly you need a star when you fix the toilet
Many
seat
stars,
and bring
actually.
the trash out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't motivate me that way.
Huh. So, anonymous person who works with us at GBH, I've discovered I no longer need to talk to my husband. We keep each other informed via Google Calendar. Well, that actually is a nice, we know who it is. We're not going to name names here.
Perfect.
877-301-8970. Who wrote this sex on GCal? Do we know who it is? Is that an actual, it's an anonymous text. There's sex on GCal. I have a flip phone. No wonder I can't get laid. Am I allowed to say that? Or I don't think I can. So I'm sorry I said that. My apologies.
Well, I know your flip phone isn't going to get you any. That's how it is.
Problem.
I wonder what the invite would look like. Would you send a Google Calendar share event?
I really don't know.
Okay.
Lorraine in Boston, you are next with Sue O'Connell and me, Jim Browdy. Hi there. Calendars.
Hi to both of you.
Hi to both of you. I mean, how
Hi
do
to
you?
both of you.
Hi.
I'm good.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly, yes.
Okay, great. So I'm a professional organizer.
Oh.
And I am a big fan of calendars.
Good.
I go back to the days when we would say, I'll pencil you in.
I remember that when we had pencils.
And, yeah. And then, okay, so if it doesn't happen or you get a better offer, you erase it. You write over it.
Yeah.
So if you have a paper calendar and an electronic calendar, you're really going to get yourself crazy. You're at a meeting and somebody wants to schedule the next meeting and, oh, my calendar's at home. I particularly find that very annoying. Bring your damn paper calendar with you to the meeting if you have to. Only one calendar for everything, not one for the gym and one for the this and one for the that.
Okay.
On the Google Calendar, you can color code things.
Yeah, we heard
that. Easily go. Did you have somebody say that? Okay.
Now, before you go ahead, is there any chance you could call Margery and talk to her about bringing the calendar to the meeting kind of thing?
That would be helpful.
We gave you her number. Appreciate that.
All right, Lorraine. Thanks for
you,
your
Lorraine.
call.
Appreciate your call.
You know, Fast Company
She's an organizer.
they have a story about how to make your work calendar less overwhelming.
I missed that. What do you
know,
do?
set clear priorities, learn to say no. You're good at that, Jim.
I'm not good at it. I'm not good. I'm far better than I used to be.
This is a good one. Use the 2-minute rule. And that means, David Allen in his book, Getting Things Done, he suggests that if a task can be completed in 2 minutes or less, you should do it immediately. This rule helps prevent your to-do list from becoming cluttered with minor tasks and ensures that these small items don't take up unnecessary space on your calendar.
Well, let me tell you a story that's not exactly calendar related, but it's not unrelated. One of our many bosses at WTKK, when Margery and I were at the other station, at the old station, the commercial station, he was our regional manager in charge of the 5 stations. You'd walk in his office, how many things were on his desk?
Nothing.
Not one thing other than his computer. Now, if he had said to you, do you want to come around and see how many emails do you currently have in your account, would you say? How many do you have? You can tell us.
Probably 150,000.
Okay, I have 46,000. I looked last night. 46,000. Yeah. How many emails? I won't name this guy. It's fine. How many emails did he have on his computer? 0.
Yeah.
Here's his, which is a variation of this thing.
It's psychotic.
His approach to this is, if an email demands an immediate response, what should you do?
Answer it.
Respond immediately. If an email isn't important enough for a quick response, what do you do with
Delete it.
Delete it. So how many emails did he have? None. What do you think of that?
I think it's psychotic.
You do. I heard
I
that
would rather,
somewhere.
every now and then I go in and do a full purge, not a full purge, a semi-purge of my big attachment emails.
You do a size thing.
Yeah, and I get rid of those, or I have
a
a few people that we do design stuff, and it's going to take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
But I have colleagues and friends. I don't think it happens on your Apple phone anymore, but it used to show how many emails you had.
Yeah.
They would have anxiety attacks looking at my emails. It's like, look, I didn't ask you to send me an email. I don't have to open it, and I don't have to clean it out.
Yeah.
It's all living in storage space.
150,000?
Yeah, I have
That's
like 7
pretty
email
impressive.
accounts.
You do?
Yeah.
Why
yeah.
is that? You
well,
have some
I have a number of
burners or
businesses.
something?
I got burners. I got business accounts. I've got all sorts of
Other
things.
stuff?
Very busy. Other stuff.
Foreign
too.
investments? Exactly.
My Bitcoin.
Rowan,
wallet.
you were in Worcester. You were on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, yeah. I was just saying to avoid the issue of the earlier caller's daughter had, where she's like not having any free time for months.
Yeah.
I schedule my free time on my calendar. So, like, if I notice a weekend's getting especially busy, a couple weeks in advance, I will block off the Sunday afternoon and say free time, not doing anything.
And Ro, what do you do? So when that happens, so it's Saturday night, you look ahead at your calendar, your entire Sunday is open. How do you feel? Do you have like a little anxiety that pops up? I have to
Or the
fill
opposite.
it? Or
How about the opposite?
Or the opposite. How do you
No,
feel?
I get excited for that.
And what do you do?
It's like I go to the gym. I do any errands around the town that I need to do. I'll read my book. I'll hang out with my animals.
So
take a walk.
That's fabulous.
I love
that
the-
is really fabulous.
I see a dating app that we should do to match people based on their calendar orientations. I think.
You
'Cause
do?
I'm wondering, are you partnered, Rowan? I don't want to get too personal.
Well, you
but
just did.
I just did. I mean, or do you,
No,
do you
it's okay.
date people who are like you regarding the calendar, or the opposite? Like,
So I definitely date people who have their own share of free time. Like, I need to be with people who also prioritize downtime.
I love
like
it.
that. I
and
love it.
scheduling it makes it much more likely to happen. That was a fabulous call.
Excellent,
Thank you for
Rowan.
that. We have an incredible, I mean, I didn't even know he listened to the show. Justice Kavanaugh just texted us. He said, I like to keep a calendar to make appointments to drink with the boys. So thank you. Thank you very much,
I mean, I thought
Justice
that
Kavanaugh, for
actually
listening.
showed some organizational skills on his
On
front.
his
The
part?
people might remember he had the calendar from his teenage years that
Allegedly.
yeah.
Can we get back to Rowan for 1 second? Scheduling free time. When we talked to her, it was like that's exactly what you should be doing.
Yes.
You schedule things you have to do. One of the things you have to do is nothing. I mean that sincerely.
No, I'm-
and it's much more likely it happens if
Yeah,
you do that.
if you schedule things and write it down, or whatever it is that you do, it is definitely more likely to happen. We have anonymous texter says to follow up on the woman's call who said that you should have just one calendar. I love having a paper calendar that I don't carry with me. That way, if I'm put on the spot
This
and
is
someone
brilliant.
asks me to do something that I don't want to do, I say I need to go home and check my paper calendar, and that gives me time to figure out
Brilliant.
an excuse to avoid another commitment.
That is
That's
my
brilliant.
hero right there.
You know what my sister-in-law Lois does is she has
Lois? You never mentioned Lois.
Lois, so don't say that because then she'll be upset that
No,
I
you
never
mentioned
her.
sister-in-law. You never mentioned her name. You mention her all the time, actually.
All the time I'm talking
All
about
the time. Lois.
She has a calendar in the kitchen.
Sure she does.
And writes everyone's birthday in
That's
there.
beautiful.
And she sends cards all the time. She is
that
definitely
Lois we're talking about?
Yeah, she is definitely
You mention
the
her all the
most
time, I know.
organized birthday card and gift giver. And
That is
it's really
fabulous.
amazing.
Okay, is Jared around, or is he not? He's not.
Oh, yeah.
We don't. Oh, he is. Hey, Jared, how are you?
Jared?
I was just answering my calendar invite from Lois.
Okay, I would guess you have a calendar that schedules probably in 30-second increments. Is that a safe assumption?
Yes, says the man who frequently texts me and says, I'll call you in 3.5
I do.
minutes.
I literally
I know.
do. I say
I
I'll
know.
call you in 3 minutes. I do.
know. I've gotten those texts.
So does Jamie. Everybody has. Okay. So are you a calendarer or not?
Of course, we have to be. We do a lot, and so it all has to be on a calendar. But now I use it for mainly for the reason you're just talking about, is to make sure that I have these blocks where I'm not doing anything.
By the way, Jamie just writes in response to what you said, nothing causes me more anxiety than getting a quote, call you in 4 minutes, and 6 minutes later, I'm still waiting. That does create anxiety.
Because I don't work for you, I look at the other way. Oh, this is going to be juicy. This is going to be a good one.
What do you mean you don't work for me?
Yeah, well, sorry to break it to you, Jim.
We'll get back to you on that after
All
the
right,
show.
so what's coming up on your culture show there, mister?
So we're going to be talking to Dennis Lehane, of course, great, phenomenal novelist who has been doing a lot of great TV, including his most recent series, Smoke. I don't know if either of you have been watching it. It's just dropping now on Apple, and it's fantastic.
Is it? Well, he's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, it's definitely watch this show. And then we're going to be talking to Emily Ruddick of Mass Creative. We talked about recently Boston having a mayoral forum on the arts, and so we'll be talking about what this means going forward, how politicians can be held accountable in Boston and other places for arts platforms. And then we'll speak to Mahesh Das, president of Boston Architectural College, about this new proposed zoning in Boston to have many 700-foot tall skyscrapers, and how any city would contend with development like that.
That sounds like an excellent show there, Jared Bowen.
It's going to be fun.
Schedule us in and call me after your show about the reporting to
Can
me
you
thing.
calendar me in for our drink
Appreciate it.
that we're going to have, whether it's tea or whatever?
Yeah, we were scheduling earlier today.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Jared, good luck. We'll be listening 2 o'clock right on the station. Jared Bowen, Culture Show.
All right, thanks for listening to another edition of BPR. Of course, keep up with us 24/7 with our podcast. Check out TikTok at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we've got Chuck Todd, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, and Massachusetts Secretary of Education, Paul Revelle, and Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aiden Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker, and our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Today, you want to say
I
our
do
very
indeed.
special,
Nia Harmon is right there, who is one of, can you just raise your hand so people see who you are? Nia Harmon is one of the great summer interns ever. Today is her last day, and we really miss her already. She'll return to Emerson as a senior, studying multimedia journalism. Aside from being an incredibly talented and creative producer and journalist, she's president of Emerson's chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, executive producer for WBN TV Boston. The summer produced, by the way, this is one of the best blooper reels we ever had. To be fair, Margery and I gave her a lot to work with. But Nia, you were really spectacular. Everybody thinks that. We can't thank enough, and we hope we continue the relationship. So special thanks to our BPL staff, Matty Geyer, Bill Francis, Juan Jose Cardena, Elena Gonzalez. Thanks to our host at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned for the Culture Show. Sue, you're fabulous. You'll be back tomorrow.
Thank you.
And I am Jim Browdy, and thanks for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow at 11. Bye.
Sinfonia Concertante for violin and viola with Kim Kashkashian, Guido Creamer, and the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, Nicholas Harnoncourt, conducting today's afternoon stretch.
This summer, WCRB brings you the Boston Symphony Orchestra at Tanglewood. I'm Brian McCreath, inviting you to join me for the BSO at Tanglewood every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evening through August 24th on 99.5 WCRB Classical Radio Boston.
Classical Radio Boston is WCRB FM 99.5 HD1 Lowell, Boston.